Holy crap.
People persist in doubting the evidence.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
We're turning all of our antennas towards Jimmy Church on Dark Matter Radio.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
How you doing? Yeah. Let's do some more Space Boy. Hold on. That's what I'm talking about. How you doing? Fade to Black. All fired up here. Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Wednesday, October 15th. How you doing? 285 days into the new year. Welcome to everybody listening all around the world, across the United States, hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, far and near, north and south, east and west. Did I leave one out? No, I didn't. We are live from the JP Motorsports Studios right here in downtown Burbank, California. And if you know Burbank, it's about the size of the dime in your pocket. If you're in Burbank, come by the studio. For KJCR on the Dark Matter Radio Network, I am your oh so humble host, Jimmy Church. Big salute to the proud men and women in uniform all around the world, fighting the good fight for us, protecting that right of free speech, the Constitution. Keith, you got to get us on AFN, Armed Forces Network. You got to. They would love Dark Matter. They would love it. Think about it. Well, this show. I don't know. You can't speak for everybody else. All right. Podcast, semi-updated. It's all done. I can take a breather. Go check it out if you haven't subscribed. Just go to the website. It's right there. All right. Let's get this one cracking. Is everybody ready? It's so funny. I'm sitting here doing the show. And when I speak, I just glance over to Twitter to watch the ebb and flow, the reaction stuff. I love it. True interaction. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. What you want to do is hashtag DMRadioNet. Hashtag DMRadioNet. Jump into the sandbox. Come hang out with us at JChurchRadio. Jack Thompson, look at you. That's what I'm talking about. That'll get a retweet. Watch this. Bang. Done. That's what I'm talking about. Need to hang one of those right behind me in the studio. I've thought about it, too. I have thought about it. Reminds me of, what was that guy's name? Something George. Oh, that had the talk show here on UHF in Los Angeles. Something George with the bad toupee and the gray hair. What was his name? And he had the American flag behind him. Wally George. Wally George. You know, the rest of the country, not to go off on a tangent, but the rest of the country just never got to enjoy Wally George. Wally George was like like Howard Stern, an old version, kind of like that, kind of like combination of Jerry Springer, and he was a sign of things to come, and he was on UHF on one of the channel whatever here in Los Angeles, and I don't think he got across the country. I think he was just here. I wonder if there's Wally George on YouTube. Need to. That's it. Walanda tonight after the show. Wally George, not Ugly George. Wally George. Wally George. WALLY George. Wally George. He used to live in Sherman Oaks. I used to see him running around. Okay. Anyway, how did I? Oh yeah, the American flag. Wally George. Today, let's get this one cracking. Let's go. Today, actor Larry Miller, 61 years old. And let me tell you something. That's one of the funniest guys in the business right there. Larry Miller. Larry. I was walking through the mall, Rita and I, a few years back. Sherman Oaks were literally, and he walks by us. I'm like, dude, there's Larry Miller. He's right there. He's in all the Christopher Guest movies. Just a funny guy. Also today, skateboarding icon Stacy Peralta, 57 years old. There's a guy right there that changed the world. Changed the world. Also today, Richard Carpenter. That's right, of the Carpenters. Where's he? Was from Downey, California. I'm sure when you cross the city line there in Downey, it's got to say home of the Carpenters somewhere. Yes, I'm a Carpenters fan. I'll admit it. I'll go there right now. There's not a Carpenters song that I don't know, word for word. Love the Carpenters. Absolutely love. How do you say the Carpenters and Metallica in the same sentence on a radio show? I just did. Carpenters rocked. He's 68 years old. Actor Dominic West, 45 years old today. How do you make the cut? How do you make the cut on this birthday list? How do you make the cut? You know what? You change lives. Larry Miller, icon. Stacy Peralta, icon. Richard Carpenter, icon. Dominic West, you dang Skippy. 45 years old. He was in 300. He was in that tremendous series on Showtime, The Wire. He's in John Carter. He's currently stars in a new series called The Affair. But that's not his best stuff. Oh, no. Oh, no. Dominic West played Kirk Cuddy, guitarist for Steel Dragon in the movie Rockstar. I see Dominic West all the time on TV. See him, and he's cool. He's great. He's a great actor. He really is. But he nailed it in Rockstar. Absolutely nailed it. And you just don't go play a heavy metal guitar player. Obviously it was supposed to be Judas Priest. You don't. You come from somewhere. And I'm telling you, Dominic has got it in his DNA. He slayed in Steel Dragon. All right. Our dead guy birthday today is Frederick Nietzsche. Born in 1844, died in 1900 at the age of 55. Dude challenged Christianity, challenged traditional morality with books like Beyond Good and Evil. I know you read that. Twilight of the Idols. You better have that. And Thus Spake Zarathustra. Not also spoke, but thus spake Zarathustra. Nietzsche. How do you make the cut? Well, he did. Deservedly so. Okay. All right. Let's stir up Twitter. Let's do it. I have to. This is what's on everybody's mind, so I'm going to do it right now. What are you more worried about, Fadernauts? Ebola or ISIS? What are you worried about? because the media definitely wants you to be scared of both. The onslaught of the last month has been insane. Liam just said, stupidity. Sandy Hook. Beck's stupidity. Wise Frog. Humans. What bothers you more right now? What are you worried about? I'll be talking about Ebola more in just a minute. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio, hashtag DMRadioNet. And Jack Thompson says he's hanging out. He's got a fire pit going on, and he's UFO watching tonight. Jack, anything happens, man, you going to send me a pic? You going to send me a pic real time? MG says Ebola. Ebola. Yeah, Ebola. If you had to pick one, Liam says Ebola. Space Boy, Ebola. MC Ryder says, I fear nothing. Method says nothing, neither. Wow. Mr. Anthony, Ebola. Mark Davich, Ebola. Cozy Hound says, more afraid of those little bugs than those ones that I can aim and shoot at. Yeah. It's a good answer. That's a good answer. All right. Tonight, Josh Reeves. Oh, yeah. Josh Reeves in the house tonight. So fired up about that. And all the guests this week, I think last week too as well, all requests from you. Never forget that. All right? This is Bespoke Radio. It's for you. I'm just the guy sitting at the mic. That's what's going on. I'm sitting at the mic, enjoying myself, having a good time with you. These guests are your request. And Josh is somebody that I've listened to for a long, long time. Really appreciate his points of view. But relentless email. And finally, I caved. And I only caved because Josh is somebody that could come onto this show every single night. We could talk for 3 hours, and I could never have another guest, and it's all good. You know, it's just one of those things. I wanted to hold Josh back. Just wanted to hold him off. Well, I couldn't hold it off anymore, the urge. And I will do my best tonight to not sound like a fanboy. Okay? Josh is the man. I'm really looking forward to our conversation tonight. And I have no idea what we're going to talk about. I have no clue where we're going to go. There's enough current events today to we could just pick one subject and go. There's all of his, well, anyway, I have no idea, and I'm just fired up. Once in a while, we can bring on a guest, you know, whether it's somebody like, you know, Jay Widener or Jim Mars, you know, guests like that, where, you know, they come on the show and it's just a natural conversation, and it's great. It's great. Well, like both nights this week too, we're that way. Josh is another one of those, and so hopefully, watch. There you go. I just jinxed it. Oh, and I will ask Josh about open lines. I think enough of you would like to chime in. Okay, email throughout the show, Jimmy@JimmyChurchRadio.com. You can also go over to the website. Last night with Butch, that was a stunning show to me. Stunning show. It was one of those shows where you're like shocked into being aware. You know how you have that adrenaline rush, you know, just you have to pump the brakes in your car, you know, somebody pulls out in front of you, you have that little thing that happens and your adrenaline just boom all the way to your toes. And then suddenly you are alert and aware, and you can see the world in 3D, 4D, 5D. That's what happened last night with Butch. And I spoke to him today. I did get some email yesterday about Todd Sees, and I forwarded it to Butch today, and we talked again. And I got to tell you, that was one of those shows last night. And I know that Eugene was on Skywatchers last night after the show. And I wanted to call in, but I was so amped. So we didn't leave the studio. We stayed here and we listened to Eugene and just kind of wound down and came down off of Butch Witkowski. And that's what I did last night. So did anybody listen to Eugene last night? I don't know if anybody did. I kind of checked out of Twitter and relaxed and ate some snacks here and listened to Eugene. So, but anyway, Eugene did his debut last night. How did Eugene do? Okay, with that, let's get to this first break. I see everybody is here. Everybody is accounted for. Everybody is present. George says Eugene rocked it last night. Cool. Right on. Top 5 show? What does that mean? What does that mean? This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Tonight, Josh Reeves. Tomorrow night is Fader Nights. Favorite night of the week. Second favorite night after Josh, or third favorite after Butch. Oh, wait, we can't forget about Bruce Maccabee. That's what kind of week it has been here at Fade to Black. I'm your humble host, Jimmy Church. Shoot me an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Follow us on Twitter @JChurchRadio. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, you have tuned into the latest phenomenon in late night talk radio, Fade to Black, starring the inimitable Jimmy Church, showcasing his continuing quest in pursuit of knowledge of the strange and paranormal. Sit back, open your mind, and let's get cracking.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I gotta tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. Doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil 3-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444, or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your humble host, Jimmy Church. Oh, so humble. All right. Let's get to some email. This one from Ben Miller. I believe most of us can avoid Ebola with a little common sense behavior in public, but look at this headline from a section of the LA Times. Virus transmitting yellow fever mosquitoes discovered in LA County. Now, I got the email, Ben, but there's one thing that the rest of the country needs to know. We don't have mosquitoes here. I don't know what part of LA County they're talking about. Mosquitoes don't exist. We don't have a lot of the flying insects that, you go, once you leave LA and you head to the humidity and you go to the Midwest and the East Coast and stuff, you have all the crazy gunships flying around called insects. Insanity. We don't have that here. I haven't been bitten by a mosquito in the Midwest, but as long as you're here in LA County, no mosquitoes. I don't know where they're talking about, but that is some isolated swamp somewhere. I have no idea. I heard about it. So there you go. There are again, it's the media just trying to freak you out. There's no mosquitoes here in Southern California. Okay, email from Alejo Corona. He says, I just listened to your radio show about the underwater base in Malibu. I live in Los Angeles, and my wife and I like to drive to Santa Monica at night going towards Malibu. We have a spot out there where we like to park our car on the side of the road, walk down to the sand. Now, we do this at night, sometimes twice a week. Well, one night, we were sitting in the sand having our coffee when all of a sudden we see lights underwater in the distance. These look like giant spotlights moving underwater. We sat there watching these lights for about an hour when all of a sudden a U.S. Coast Guard helicopter appeared out of nowhere and hovered around these lights for about 20 minutes. I couldn't believe what was happening. We freaked out a little bit and decided to leave right after the helicopter flashed the lights at us. Another night, we came back to the same spot, and there it was again. But this time, you could feel the sand vibrating under our feet. It was weird. Well, that night, this thing decided to fly out of the water. It was a very dark night, but out in the distance, you could see this ball of light coming out of the water and flying out towards the Malibu coast. There you go. Thank you, Alejo. And next time, take a picture, will you? This is from Renee. I'm telling you, something's going on out there in Malibu. For anybody that wants to write, man, I've lived out here for years. I don't get it. We don't see anything. What are you talking about? People sitting out there in chairs and watching the light show every night. There you go. There's another report for you. This is from Renee. She says, I believe I'm being perfectly reasonable in expecting prosecution for a felony crime for the Ebola-infected nurse who traveled by air with a fever after caring for the Ebola patient, Duncan. Am I out of line for thinking this was a criminal endangerment? It certainly meets the legal definition and is punishable in some states by a fine of $50,000 and up to 10 years in jail. Maybe that would make her think twice before, again, risking the lives of others. Could not agree with you more. Could not agree with you more. The headline on CNN right now is, she should not have been on the plane. How did the nurse get on that flight? How did she end up on the plane? Dallas Mayor Mike Rollins said, I don't know. I'm asking a lot of questions today. There's no way she should have been on that flight. She was being monitored here in Dallas. What does that even mean? And if she was being monitored correctly, I think she should have never gotten on that flight. I don't get what's monitored. Who was doing the monitor? How do you get on a flight? Book the ticket. Don't you ask permission? I had heard some stuff today that she checked with the CDC. The CDC said go. She had a temperature of 99.5. 99.5, and I guess it's got to be 100 degrees or 100.5. She's a nurse. She should have known better. I don't get it. I really don't. The day before she went to the hospital with Ebola systems, Amber Benson, that's her name, was flying across the country on a commercial jet with 132 passengers. How is that possible? I don't get it. She flew from Dallas-Fort Worth to Cleveland on October 10th, my birthday. And this is what's crazy. October 13th, she's on Frontier Airlines. On October 13th, she headed home. Now, it's not about me, but I just want to paint this picture. I flew to Ohio. I flew through, we flew through Houston. They're in Dallas. Fly through Houston and to Ohio, to Columbus, and then back. On the same days that she's cruising through Ohio. Now, all I'm saying is, what were the odds of me flying on that same weekend or anybody else? And her flying through the same states, Texas and Ohio. Now, it's not about me. I'm just saying it spreads. And she's in Cleveland. And then next thing you know, those people are getting on other flights. Could have flown through, Columbus. I don't know. What about Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, where she left from? Think about this for a second. I was right there. I am just one of, millions of people that are on planes that day. But that's how it gets out. What is she thinking about? It blows my mind. I was talking to John Elias, Dr. J, earlier today about this subject. And just like anything else, any other crazy thing like this that happens, pick some virus, pick some disease, look at, leper colonies or whatever. You need to isolate it. Isolate it. As bad as it sounds, the flights that need to go in and out of Liberia right now are food and medical supplies, but no people. That's it. Isolate this thing. We knew the second that those two doctors came over here to the United States, and this guy Duncan, and the next thing you know, what is Washington D.C. thinking about with a situation like this? If you don't want it out of control, then you just don't bring it here. Well, it doesn't. It's okay. Well, now look what we've got and what we're dealing with. That's it. That's it. Shut Liberia down. As soon as it's done and it's all cleared up and we've got it under control, then it's okay. But until then, fly in food, fly in humanitarian aid, and do all of that, drop it off at the airport and get the planes out of there. But no people. That's it. Kick the baggage out of the door, let it hit the tarmac, and then fly out of there. I know it's nuts. But that's what, and the issues that we have today with the media and the fear and the 24-hour news cycle now that is Ebola on CNN is being caused right now because we allowed it into the country or any other country. That's it. It's not out of control yet. Stop it now. Man, if I was president, I need to run for office. That's it. I need to run for office. I would have no problems in bringing down the gavel and saying that no. America first. The world comes first. Needs to be stopped. And that's my soapbox. I had so many other things I want to talk. I knew I was going to do that. I mean, what can we do? But the good news is Kansas City is heading to the World Series. Let's hear it for the Kansas City Royals. First time since 1985. They'll be facing either the Giants or the Cardinals. St. Louis Cardinals. George Norrie's team, by the way, I'm sure. And the Giants right now have a 2-1 lead in their best-of-7 series. The Royals went a combined 6-1 against St. Louis and San Francisco during the regular season. And I got to say, it's a good time to be a citizen of Kansas City. Good for them. With that, let's head to Josh Reeves. You guys ready? Fader Lucian? Fader Lucian? Is that what I just saw? Oh, man, that's a retweet. Let's do it. Hold on. Am I got a fedora on? Oh, good Lord. This is Fade to Black, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. When I come back, Josh Reeves in the house. Stay with us, everybody.
Are you afraid of the dark? Don't move. Don't touch that mouse. You are listening to Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Dark Matter.
Dark Matter, Dark Matter, Dark Matter, Dark Matter.
You're listening to Fade to Black
on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. I am your humble host, Jimmy Church. Let's get this one cracking. Man, you know, it's so cool. That will get your adrenaline flowing. You know, somebody dynamic like Josh Reeves is about to come up when you hear those tunes. Let's get this one cracking. Josh Reeves has spent years of researching government conspiracies and secret societies. He is a talk show host, filmmaker, and explorer. Reeves has dived in headfirst into the world of hidden ancient mysteries. Stemming from his 10 years of research on the ancient Rockwall in the suburbs of his hometown of Dallas, Texas, Josh has released almost 6 hours worth of film in 2013 and 2014 with his Lost Secrets of the Ancient Americas series. Volume 3 of the series is currently in production. If you want to support his efforts to complete his film, just go to his website. Josh is an independent researcher who brings over 25 years of research in his quest to expose the hidden truths. His uncensored radio show, and it is uncensored, The Global Reality, is now in its 7th year of broadcasting. Congratulations to that, Josh, and welcome to the program. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Jimmy. Thank you so much for having me on tonight, and I'm really excited to get into everything with you here tonight on the show.
I don't even know where we're going to start, Josh, but you know this is a funny thing with you, and take this the wrong way, okay? Take this the wrong way. I get the attitude of Alex Jones and the tone of Alex Jones, but I get the knowledge of like Jim Mars, and you're all from Texas. So, you know, it's like, and that's what I get from you. And you know what? I don't know if you've ever heard this. I've certainly never said this to you, but I'm going to say it now. Has anybody ever told you sound like Sam Kinison?
Yes, many times.
Oh, you have? Okay,
yeah,
so
it's
not just me.
Nope, not you at all. And actually, it's a total compliment. Someone said that to me one time, and the first time someone said it, I was kind of like, nah, I don't see it. And then I went and listened to a Sam Kinison thing, and oh, no, never mind. It's a compliment, I'll take it.
I worked for Kennison for quite a while.
Did you?
I sure did, in the 80s.
Another Texas boy, too.
Yeah. And he influenced me quite a bit, in good ways and bad ways. Really cool guy. Really, really, really cool guy. But his voice is something that when you become close to somebody, it's, you're attuned to it. Right. And there are times when I listen to you where you for a few minutes, and I know you don't realize because it's just you, but right. You suck me in, and I feel like Sam is in the room, and that is just brilliant. It is. Well,
that's a huge compliment. I mean, Sam Kinison was one of the greats. I mean, absolutely, it's amazing you got a chance to work with him. But I really think it's just a Texas vibe more than anything else. I mean, Alex Jones actually grew up in the same general area where I grew up, and Jim Morris was from Dallas his whole life and stuff too. Went to school in North Texas here in Dallas. So, I mean, I think it's just a Texas thing and a Texas vibe. And I think because we've had so much craziness go on in this state through the decades, and actually, when you look into my work, through the centuries, that we all sort of have that Texas vibe and that thing that we bring to the table in this research. I'm just glad that there's so many of us out here doing it. I just wish there were more.
Tell for our audience, most have heard your program and you over the years, but where did you get your start? Tell us about that really quick. That's the only softball, by the way, for the night. After that, we're going to go deep.
No problem. I mean, I actually just started out, for years just as a researcher. I mean, before I was doing radio or making films or anything, I was just wanting to learn and wanting to have knowledge on my own. So it started as that, and then it kind of morphed into doing local activism stuff. And then once I did local activism stuff and I wanted to get the message out to more people and reach more people, I was one of the original people that started the 9/11 Truth Movement back in the day here in Dallas. And I just wasn't satisfied with how many people we were reaching. So in 2007, right after I came out with my first film, a friend of mine that had a little radio network asked me to come on, and I've just been going ever since.
With and actually, this is a natural segue. Over the last couple of months, we have certainly, we had the anniversary of 9/11 and that helps. But over the last couple of months, a lot of conversation with different guests on the show and fade or nots and phone calls and so forth, open lines about 9/11. And I was just on Carrie Cassidy's show last week or the week before, and she asked me very directly what my views were with 9/11 and Sandy Hook. And my take is, because you've been on that side of the fence since the very beginning of the movement, and my view today, which I find totally fascinating, is if you took a poll on the streets now today, I would venture to guess that most people in this country think the government was involved with 9/11. And that's, as crazy as that sounds, and it is crazy, the day after 9/11, that would have been crazy talk. Now it seems like the status quo, the norm, is that the government was involved. And that is scary if Washington, D.C. even knew about 9/11 before it happened. If you know what I mean, that's bad enough right there. And how do you feel about that? The tide has turned.
Well, I kind of feel mixed sentiments about it, actually, Jimmy. I mean, I think in some ways it's a good thing, but I think in other ways it's a bad thing, because the fact of the matter is, if you look at the evidence, you can see and tell for yourself, without anybody having to tell you or really give you the facts, that we did not get told the whole story about 9/11. We haven't got told the whole story about a lot of these things, like Sandy Hook, as you mentioned, or any of the rest. But the fact of the matter is that any person, any rationally thinking person, actually takes a look at the evidence, they can determine for themselves that we weren't told the truth. Now, for me, and my attitude used to be different on this, but it's changed. But for me, you don't really need to go any farther than that. Where I think we get into problems and where issues come up is when everyone wants to get into arguments over the minutia of it, how they did it, how it was pulled off. Did they do this? Do they do that? Well, the honest truth of it is, we're never really going to know.
Right.
Do we have enough evidence to support the idea that it wasn't what they told us it was? Absolutely. Now, do we have enough evidence to say, because I'm also one of those people that thinks it's kind of simplistic and kind of marginalizing to just assign blame totally to the United States government. If you look at it, there were definitely more hands in that pot than just the United States government, foreign governments, other intelligence assets throughout the world, Israeli Mossad, British intelligence, etc. I think that, the majority of people do, I think, now feel that something is wrong and was wrong with 9/11. But I think the problem is that everybody wants to argue over how it happened in the minutia of it. And I think that's where we get into issues because, people start to get into, I've seen it happen a lot. They get into division because one person has their theory about how it happened. That conflicts with another. People get in, mudslinging matches and whatnot with each other. And we really haven't gotten anywhere. We've just got more division. And in a way, that's what I think the powers that be want. So any of these events you look at, it doesn't matter what it is, from the Kennedy assassination on to the modern day stuff, there's always little breadcrumbs and whatnot that are left there for people to follow sort of in that conspiratorial way. And I think in some cases, some of this stuff is put out. So we get led down these rabbit trails and whatnot. Really, the most important thing, again, I think, is for people to focus on the fact that we weren't told the truth and go from there. If we weren't told the truth about 9/11, what else weren't we told the truth about? And that's something that I've encountered in my work into the lost secrets. We start to find things that once you pull back and reveal this question and you say, well, wait a minute, why would the Smithsonian Institution hide artifacts from the general public? Why would they do this? Once you get down that rabbit hole, then you start to realize that it starts to ask all sorts of other questions that pertain to the whole grand scope picture of history, who we are, how we got here on this planet, and the rest of it. So I think it's important that people are looking for answers, Jimmy, but this thing where, you have to believe what I believe about 9/11, otherwise you're with the bad guys, I think it's a very dangerous route.
I was reading today a blog from a scientist, totally unrelated to 9/11 and everything. I mean, it had to do with research and star temperatures. Okay, but I'm on his blog and I'm reading, and believe it or not, there was this interesting paragraph where I stopped and I read it like 3 times, and he was referring to different scientists and how they do the research and the politics that are involved, and how one scientist doesn't agree with another one, and it could be just one guy saying no and 5 guys saying yes, but the public and that will side with the one guy that says no, and that he feels that there are conspiracies in the science community, right? And then but he said the word conspiracy, and I thought, wow, that's kind of strange coming from a scientist, that even they deal with this, right? Well, anyway, then he wrote, and this is what he wrote. I wish I had it in front of me so I could do a quote here. But he said, every politician, every government, every politician, every government, every monarchy throughout history is involved in a conspiracy to stay in power. Everyone. That to say that we don't have conspiracies today, every politician in government is involved in a conspiracy right now. And I stopped and I read that and I thought, wow, that's kind of a heavy thought, because it's probably true.
Well, I mean, the evidence definitely supports that. I mean, look around.
Whatever it's about. Maybe it's about trash collection out front, and whatever. But it's how they work. That's it. It's how they work. When I was on Carrie's show, Carrie, I know people want to, talk about, nuclear devices, or they want to talk about blasting caps, or they want to talk about jet fuel, or they want to talk about hologram airplanes, and they want to talk about, dead bodies that weren't there, and what all these different views. And this is exactly what you just said. None of that matters. How and when, we'll never find out. All that matters is that the government knew before it happened. That's it. After that, all the gloves are off. And that is the most important thing here. I don't know if we'll ever find out the truth, but we do know that they knew. And that is what makes me uncomfortable, period.
Absolutely. And that, you mentioned just a minute ago about, being the day after 9/11 or something, people not feeling comfortable mentioning this. I remember the day it happened. And as soon as the second plane hit, I said, just from my research into JFK alone, I said, this is another Kennedy. I mean, they're going to have their patsy rolled out here in 10 minutes on the screen telling us who to blame for this. And of course they did. And really, I'll be honest with you, Jimmy, friends of mine at the time, I mean, we almost came to blows over it. I mean, I had people, oh, don't bring that Kennedy stuff into this, blah, blah, blah. But as you mentioned, people don't say that to me anymore. I haven't gotten that in a long time. And again, I think all of the 9/11 stuff, I think it's important to seek the truth. I think it's important for people to look into it, research it. Please don't take that the wrong way and think I'm telling you not to look into it. You definitely should. But just really believe in yourself and believe what your own intuition tells you about things. Sometimes I don't get into trying to that's the one thing people need to know about me, Jimmy, if they've ever listened to me before. And you told me the same thing about yourself before we even did the show, is that you don't have any sort of agenda in any of this. You're not trying to work backwards from proving your own pet theory. I'm the same way. I'm not trying to justify the existence of a religion or myself or any belief I have. I'm strictly a researcher, an independent person that's trying to find the truth. And I think that once you get down to the bare bones elements of simply looking and trying to find out what the truth is, everything else seems to fall away. And I think that's an important thing that people need to remember.
Could you imagine the world of the 60s with Kennedy if the internet was around back then? If there was knowledge and access outside of ABC, CBS, NBC, and Time magazine, right? Because that's where everybody got their news from, and that was it. And could you just imagine the reason why 9/11 is where it is today is because of guys like you and Alex Jones and the people that started the visibility of a possibility, and then it only continued because there was something there and people were able to go find that out. Could you imagine what would have happened in the 60s if the internet was around right after the Kennedy assassination?
Well, we'd certainly be living in a completely different world now, that's for sure. I mean, that's something that's so unbelievable to even think about, Jimmy, in terms of how different the world would truly be. I can't even hardly fathom it, but you're right. It seems to me that what they were missing in that time to really cause a mass awakening was, as you mentioned, the lack of outlets, the lack of any ability and the lack of the ability for the people to even try to get the truth out there on their own. And what we have that ability now, but what we lack that they had is the groundswell, the people. People are a lot more enamored with media and every kind of entertainment, sports these days, a lot more than they were then. And it's gotten to the point where it's just made people complacent. So I think that they had, issues in their day. We have them in ours, but a lot of the same stuff is there. I mean, we're still kind of up against the same obstacles. People are still looking for truth now the way they were then. I just think that now the technology has gotten to the point where it creates so much more distractions that even when you do have people interested in this stuff, it's very hard to get people to be any kind of actually involved just because a lot of them are really scared.
You live in Texas, and Texas has got, it could be its own country. We say it all the time, but there's a different attitude that goes on in Texas. And you don't badmouth America in Texas. You don't go against the American way. And by the way, I saw a headline today. I don't know if it was on ESPN. I forget where I read it, but it said America's team is no longer the Cowboys. It's the Denver Broncos. I was like, man, you want to cause a revolt in Texas? What are you doing? Did you see that? Did you see that today?
No, I did not.
Oh man, I just thought, you really want to you want to cause trouble? Yeah, post that headline. But yeah, in Texas, it's a bit different there, isn't it? It's a different way of life.
Yeah, it is. But there's not, the thing about it is not everybody is like the stereotypical Texan that you meet. I mean, we're not all like that, which is a good thing. There's a lot of, really enlightened, intelligent, next level people that live here, just like anywhere else. I mean, it's the same thing where you live, Jimmy. Not everybody that's from California is the stereotypical Californian. It's just part of it. But you're right. I mean, there is that thing about, this connection to Texas and this connection to, America and patriotism. And I remember Jim Mars once telling me that in the early days right after Kennedy was assassinated, when he was a reporter for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, that it wasn't even polite in those days to even talk about the Kennedy assassination or to even bring it up at all, much less to even, insinuate in any way, shape, or form that there was something other than the official story. And so that shows you how far we came. I mean, people were talking about 9/11 and talking about, what it was the day it happened and right after it. So in that way, you can see where we have definitely come a lot farther because, again, people have this ability and this thing now to speak their minds more than they did. And as you mentioned, Texas, I mean, we do have sort of a certain attitude and so that comes from down here. And I think that's why there's so many people like myself and whatnot that come out of here that are researching this because we kind of feel, some of us anyway, feel kind of born into it. Like we were, supposed to exist in this part of the world at this time to talk about this stuff because there's so few people out there that are willing to put it all on the line and delve into those places that are, at times uncomfortable. But that's what I'm willing to do.
What's your position on Sandy Hook?
That's one that I think is, again, kind of just like the 9/11 thing. I think it's another one that the evidence speaks for itself. If you look at the evidence and you look at what it is, absolutely, it was some sort of operation. I mean, the anytime you see drills, of course, happening at the same time as a real event, that's a good indicator. But again, I think it is another one of those honeypot situations where they want us arguing over the minutia of it instead of asking hard questions to power and asking to the people that were involved in it, demanding answers. Instead, we're fighting between us and bickering between ourselves over, who's got the pet theory and whose is the best and which is closer. And again, I think those things don't do anything but serve to distract and to serve to keep us spinning our wheels so we don't look and anticipate what the next thing they're going to do is. Because, I mean, look at how many were happening and were coming right on top of each other around Sandy Hook. That's why they had so many different events that happened around that time right on top of each other, so that while a set of people over here is analyzing this event, they're already moving on to the next operation. And that's something in my work that I've always tried to do. I never spend too much time focusing on what the mainstream media is telling us to focus on at this time. I'm busy looking at seeing, what's going to happen next so that we can hopefully anticipate that and give people warning and people can understand that when they see something happen, that they knew was going to happen, they knew this, they saw the writing on the wall, and that it happens. That is an indicator that you as a person are now paying attention on a level that's different than the rest of everybody out there. You now have the ability to look at things and almost anticipate when they're going to happen. And that doesn't take a crystal ball or anything else. It just takes paying attention to what's going on and looking for the signs and the signals.
Well, what would gun control, right? They want to take away our guns. That was the intention of Sandy Hook. That's what the Sandy Hook truthers are going to, that's their position. But obviously that didn't happen. And if Sandy Hook, look at Texas, you live there. What would cause the great people of Texas to lay down their arms?
Oh, gosh.
Nothing.
Nothing. I mean, I can't think of one conceivable thing. I mean,
nothing. Nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
Nothing. It ain't going to happen. And I could say I'm comfortable in looking at the entire country the same way. That is one. Talk about a God-given right. Well, that's one right there that we will never give up. And so why use Sandy Hook or something like that for an attempt at gun control? It's not enough. And I can't imagine the event that would have to be to force us to lay down our arms. And that's the problem. That's the main problem that I have with Sandy Hook.
Well, I don't think that it was a lot of these events are not designed to be one-offs, Jimmy. I mean, they're not designed to just have the effect of just one event. They are meant to have an effect, that stacks on top of 10 other events like it, 10 other school shootings, Columbine, whatever it may be. They're intended to, over a period of time, basically, it's like building a case. It's like you're going to court and you're building a case and you're building your stuff so you can then roll it out and say, okay, here's the evidence. Here's to back up why I believe this way.
Sure.
And I think that that's what a lot of these things are. It's the same way with 9/11 or the Gulf Wars. I mean, people believe that these are just happening for oil. And if you believe that we're committing genocide and wiping people out, wiping out entire countries just for oil, you're just not getting the whole picture. It's so much deeper and so much larger than that and goes to right to the core of the existence of humans on this planet, and people just overlook it. So I don't think that the gun control thing, even though that's an easy sort of scapegoat, while it may serve to enhance the people who want gun control and to sort of strengthen their side for a small percentage, I think more of what it has to do with are the ability to be able to pull off that kind of a hoax in broad daylight in front of people's eyes and have people just believe it 100%. 9/11, of course, was a good example of that. But I think the more that they do this and the more they get away with it, it kind of pushes the boundaries for them because it does appear that eventually there is going to be some sort of event you could equate with a 9/11 or a Kennedy or a Sandy Hook or whatever it may be that will be so unbelievable they will have to use everything in their arsenal to convince people it's real, whether that's, as some people believe, them staging an alien invasion and getting us all to band together to fight these phony aliens, who knows. But I definitely think that that's what Sandy Hook and all these events are, that they're not really important so much on their own, even though we're told, oh, this is absolutely for gun control. This is absolutely because they want to come after your guns. Well, maybe a little bit. But I think the most important thing for people to realize is to look at these events not individually, look at them stacked together, and look at what the end result of, say, well, look, we had a Sandy Hook and we had this and we had that. This is why we need to justify this thing over here. It's all of it is to just justify whatever their next operation is going to be.
Well, the question is, has the government ever lied to us? The answer is yes. When? Every day. Okay? Every single day. I just think if when it comes to gun control, if I don't know what they are thinking. If I'm going to give a tip to Washington, they're going down the wrong road. I don't understand why they're sitting around and contemplating this, and I can understand the intention, of course, to control the masses. I get that. I understand that. But it's not working, is my point. They need to come up with another plan if that's what they intend to do. And I don't know what plan it would take. Like I said, what would it take in Texas for everybody to get the nothing? So I just don't understand.
Well, I think that it's really more than anything is what I look at is all of this stuff that's been going on over the past 4 or 5 years has all really been actually ever since the first term when Obama came in office. It seems that a lot of the news stories and a lot of things that the government has done and governments around the world have done have been to intentionally inflame the people. And that's something I've been monitoring for a long time. I think that that's part of the goal. They want to enrage the citizens. If they wanted our guns, they would have came and got them a long time ago. The fact of the matter is they want people to have guns. Think about how much money the arms makers and the people who sell the weaponry, who are the same people that provide military weaponry, mind you, think about how many billions of dollars, Jimmy, they made off of scaring people with the Sandy Hook or whatever it may be into thinking gun control might happen. It's not even about what are they going to do or what can they do to get people to give up their guns, Jimmy. It's about what can they do to make people scared of the fact that they may come after them. And what did it do? They did it. And it caused $1 billion plus spike in the arms industry. These guys sell weapons. That's what the people at the top do. If they can't get a war funded to sell their weapons, they will use another thing to scare people. You got a black president, you get a Democrat, you get him in there, you get a bunch of school shootings, you get all these people in Texas and everywhere else scared. They may come from the guns, and gun sales and ammo sales go through the roof, and you didn't need a war to jumpstart your military arms sales, and that's what they've done.
This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your humble host, Jimmy Church. We were talking with Josh Reeves. Josh, I want to change gears a little bit here. Let's talk about Ebola. And I had said at the beginning of the show, I don't know if you heard it, but there's two things right now that they're trying to scare us with, and it's obvious. It's ISIS and it's Ebola. Which one should we be worried about more?
I would say we should be worried. Well, that's such a crazy question because first off, let's just establish that we both know, and everybody knows out there that they're both BS. I mean, let's just establish that we know that this is part of their control plan and the way to just scare us, as you mentioned. But I think that what is more worrisome than this contrived threat of the new Al-Qaeda ISIS is the Ebola, and not the Ebola itself. I've said from the very beginning, because of my research into other medical plagues and the whole medical industrial complex thing, that the Ebola virus itself, if it even exists, is not what we have to fear. What we have to fear is the people who are going to act and react from the fear, as is going on right now where I live. I mean, I can't even go out somewhere, Jimmy, and have dinner without hearing 10 people have conversations, and all you hear is this fear and panic in people's voices here in Dallas. And I think that's exactly what they want. Want everybody to be in fear of this so that they can then sell the vaccine. And when you look into who owns the vaccine, GlaxoSmithKline, they own the vaccine to the Ebola. What else vaccines have they owned through the years? Well, they were responsible for the AZT failed cancer drug and chemotherapy drugs that actually are what kills you, not the virus or whatever it may be itself. It's the same kind of thing, Jimmy. They want to create a fear and a panic, make everybody thinking they may catch it so they can get everybody lined up and have forced vaccinations and rake in billions of dollars. GlaxoSmithKline is who people need to look at. Look at the patents they own. Look at the vaccine patents they own. And then look at how they've made deals with the CDC, and the CDC owns the patent on Ebola. They did that in 2009. I think people need to fear the fear that they're acquiring from the media more than they need to fear the Ebola itself. And I think that's the same thing with ISIS. You could argue it's the same thing. They're creating this phony scare again, so they get a reaction out of us, which allows them to basically do anything they want and justify anything they do over keeping us safe. And 9/11 was the same way. We'll keep you safe, but what did we get? We got, the lockdown, we got tracking and tracing, we got everything else. So again, I think it's just like everything else, Jimmy. They get us in fear so they can get us to react or act accordingly.
What's the word on the street in Dallas? What's the mood like there? It must be insane. I was just in Houston last week, and I was kind of tripping on how people were acting in Texas. What's it like in Dallas?
Well, I'm as well as doing radio and stuff, I also sell gems and minerals and crystals and stuff on the side, and we do a lot of events around Dallas. And a lot of the events that we do, sometimes we do them once a month, and I started noticing that a couple of weeks ago, right when the Ebola thing started going, all these events that we were doing started dropping off. There started being less people when there should have been tons of people, and we started noticing, wait a minute, what's going on here? Are there people not coming out? We kind of joked about it at first that, maybe people are scared of Ebola or something. But now, today I was just reading news stories here locally, Jimmy, about, there are people here in Dallas who are panicking, freaking out, not leaving the house. And again, I think it's unwarranted. I think that at this point, again, the Ebola is not what we have to fear. People need to be worried about whether or not they're going to quarantine this entire city with a military lockdown and have forced vaccinations. That's what people should be worrying about, but that's not what they're worrying about. They're worrying about whether or not they're going to contract the Ebola virus itself. So I think what I see here in Dallas right now is a lot of uninformed panic, and that's, to me, one of the most dangerous things, that you can have uninformed panic and kill more than anything.
Do you think the mayor of Dallas has this under control, or do you feel like he's not on? Well, he's the mayor, and the buck stops there. But how do I want to say this with compassion? I don't want to sound crazy, but it seems like some crazy mistakes have happened one after another with this.
But were they mistakes? I mean, that's my thing, Jimmy. Were there mistakes, or were they allowed to happen on purpose? That's the thing. Right. I'm trying to be gentle here, but it seems like I'm not there. And we only know what CNN and Fox and everybody else is feeding the rest of the country. I'm not there. You are. Does it feel that way to you? Does it feel deliberate, or was this just one
crazy mistake after another.
No, I don't believe it was one crazy mistake after another. There was too much going on for it to be one mistake after another. They had one case. They had that case in time. They knew what was going on, and yet they voluntarily, in some cases, didn't follow these protocols or these procedures. And why wouldn't they do it? If it was serious and it was a real threat, they would have followed those procedures. This is not just bumbling. This is intentional bumbling. Now, if you wanted to get out there and you were wanting it to escape, what would you do? Well, you would bumble and do those things and not follow those procedures and then just blame it easily on incompetence. And that's, to me, what they've done. I mean, luckily, our local ABC affiliate here, WFAA in Dallas, had the foresight to have helicopters on the scene at the apartment building where this the first gentleman that died was from. And I guess the first day they found him and he came out, he vomited in front of the apartment complex. And the local TV newscopter from Channel 8 happened to have the cameras rolling and were able to catch them just with a power washing the vomit into the drainage, the storm drainage, just right into the public water system. No containment at all. No hazmat suits. No anything. That was my first indication, Jimmy, that, okay, they want this to break out. I already knew this, but they want there to at least, even if it doesn't break out, they want there at least to be the fear, and they're showing publicly. They could have easily not shown that. Somebody in power could have not allowed them just power washing with no containment out on the airwaves. They allowed that to go out because they want people to be in fear of this because, again, who benefits, follow the money. It's that same old thing.
I remember I did the same thing that you did. I watched the helicopter footage over the apartment. I was glued to the TV. And the one thing, and I commented on this show about what I'm about to say, which is this. The one thing that I would expect as an American with our federal government, the apartment is right there. We know this. Where is the insane hazmat convergence? I want to see 100 hazmat suits running around. I want to see total lockdown. I want to see all those other apartments emptied. Oh, and they waited and waited and waited. And I was in shock. You would have thought I expected the exact opposite. 180 degrees, flip-flop from what was actually happening from what should have happened. And it was shocking to me to see the slow response. I still don't understand why.
Well, I immediately knew after researching who owns the patent on the vaccine and all that stuff that immediately, okay, this is like AIDS or cancer where, they tell you that the symptoms of this are, your immune system breaking down, whatever it may be. But then they give you the drugs that are supposed to combat it. And then the drugs give you the side effects, the losing weight, the hair falling out, whatever it may be. And last week, whenever this gentleman here that had the first case of Ebola in Dallas, their news came out on a Monday that he was being given that day the experimental Ebola vaccine made by GlaxoSmithKline. And I said right then and there, he'll be dead by tomorrow. Because, again, it's not the Ebola that's going to kill you. It is going to be the vaccination or the cure that they offer up that is going to cause the massive outbreaks and the massive deaths. And, of course, the very next day, Jimmy, after they gave him that vaccine, he died. And that's, to me, that's where the fear needs to be placed. And the fear is not being assigned to the right place. It's being assigned in the place it doesn't need to be. People are not concerned with what they should be concerned about this whole deal. And to me, that's what scares me the most about being here in Dallas, Texas.
With Obama, do you think he should have allowed those first two doctors into the country?
Who's to say that? I don't know. I'm just one of those people, Jimmy. I don't give, just like I don't give the government all the credit or all the responsibility for doing 9/11. I don't really give Obama or Bush or any of those guys credit for all the things that they do. I think it's definitely above their heads. It's hard to say. I mean, I don't want to pin this on Obama any more than I want to pin 9/11 on Bush. Were they involved and were they in the power structure? Sure, but the guys that make these calls are generally military. They're generally way, way, way above the head of even the commander in chief in some cases. So, was there an intentional? I think they intentionally did. Yeah, let this person in so that this phony scare of this outbreak could happen. Absolutely. I don't think that any of this happened by accident. And I, of course, don't think it happened by accident that the first one broke out right here in Dallas, Texas at all.
Would you lock down Liberia?
Whew. Oh, man. Yeah, again, all these are tough questions. And I mean, of course, on the surface of it, if you're looking at this from a, real world, regular, everybody perspective, I think your answer would be yes. But again, it seems that Liberia was like their test bed, their test ground. It seemed to be where they really wanted this outbreak to happen, whether that be for population reduction purposes or whatnot, that's debatable. But for whatever reason, that was where the ground zero was chosen. And yeah, I mean, I think if I thought it was a real threat, Jimmy, I'd say yes to that. But at this point, the fact of this thing being very, very promulgated and created and used as a fear thing, I really don't know what to say. I really don't know whether I would say yes, absolutely, or no. But I think letting people come in here, for anything, letting them come into the country for any reason, when they may be contaminated with something that has the ability to break out on a large scale, I think is negligent and definitely needs to be fixed.
Yeah, if it is what it is, right? If it is what it is, lock it down.
Right.
If it is what it is, we have the world to think about. I know it would suck to live in Liberia in a situation like that, but you know what? There's the bigger picture. So if it is what it is, lock it down. And if you're not, then there's something funny here. What are you doing allowing it to propagate if it is what it is?
That's the whole issue, Jimmy. I think that's really what we should be looking at in all of this, because either way, you've got negligence going on here. I mean, we've had lockdowns and whatnot for stuff. I mean, look at the way that they tried to fearmonger swine flu and bird flu and all that a few years ago, and it just didn't work out. And these same companies that we're talking about now that own these vaccines owned the vaccines for those as well. But it wasn't something where they really got enough people worried about it. And I always tell people, my listeners, Jimmy, on my show, I always tell people, whatever the government or whatever the establishment tells you, just do the opposite of it. If they tell you to be in fear of something, you need to worry. Hey, don't
worry. Right.
But when they do like they're doing now, and you see for the first time ever someone like, our governor here Governor Perry agreeing with Obama about the Ebola thing, you're like, wait a minute, this guy, Obama could say the sky was blue and Perry would say, no, it's red. You're wrong. I mean, he'll argue about anything. But on this, all of a sudden, both of them, don't worry, we got this.
Right.
It's all good. That worries me more than anything.
When you watch the news, I already know the answer. I just want to hear you say it in your best Kennison. When you watch the news, is that what you do? Do you flip it over 180 degrees? Is that how you get to the truth?
I wouldn't say I do that every time, but I think oftentimes it is. I have found that it is good when they say, I don't worry. When they say, oh my God, you need to be panicked, you need to be worried about this, I'll tell people, nah, I don't even worry about it. And it turns out that way. But again, when they're saying, hey man, it's all good, we got this. Wait a minute. Why are you being nice all of a sudden? Usually you're telling me to freak out. Why all of a sudden are you telling me to, hey man, it's cool, chill out, have a drink, kick back, relax. We got you on this. I mean, these guys can't even balance or keep the deficit straight. But they got us on this supposed outbreak. I don't know. It's a little fishy.
Yeah. Well, tell me really quick before we move on. What was your dad like? What was your mom like? Were they like you? Where did you get the attitude from?
I don't know. It just came out, just me. I mean, I just was born different. My dad wasn't like this. My mom's not like it. Nobody in my family else is. I'm just, I don't know. I'm just a lone wolf.
What do they think about you now?
Well, my dad passed away in 2011. T was at first very, he wasn't really on board with a lot of this stuff at first. And over the years, I got, especially 9/11. And over the years, I got him really reevaluating some stuff and looking at it. And eventually I caught him out in the yard one time yelling at the neighbor about Building 7. I kind of had a tear in my eye.
Right on. Yeah, my parents, I was just back from my brother's wedding. And I'll tell you, they just let the whole, ufology, conspiracy subject, it was just never brought up.
Right.
No, they just, I think they're happy, they're cool in a way, but no, they just, no, the subject never comes up, ever. It just doesn't come up. Don't you have a show? Don't you talk about aliens? It's kind of funny. And anyway, because I think everybody's attitudes like yours, it comes from somewhere, and the way that you're brought up has everything to do with it. And I just picture your parents, and not being radicals, but obviously they had to have free spirits, open minds to the apple doesn't fall far.
No,
from the tree.
I promise you, no, it wasn't at all. My parents really, no. None of them were ever really into this. I started researching UFOs and Bermuda Triangle and stuff like that when I was in the 3rd or 4th grade.
Right.
And I think that the reason why they never questioned me on it and never really said anything to me about it was through the years growing up, even into middle school and high school and stuff, was I think they were just happy I was reading something, anything. I really think that's what it was. They didn't care.
Right.
Oh, he's got his nose in a book. So.
All right. We were talking earlier today. This is Fade to Black in the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We're talking with Josh Reeves. We were talking earlier today about Sitchin and the Book of Enki. And I have, and congratulate, I don't know how you managed to get through that, but that was a labor of love. And for everybody out there that hasn't read Enki, Josh has got his own, I want to say book on tape. I don't know. How would you even describe that? Because you read it, but then you interject. So I don't know. What would you call that?
We just call them, book readings. I don't know. There was something that kind of started on my show after about a year of being on air. And I got to this point where I got tired of talking about news stories and news stuff every day. And I just decided to read a book on air once. The first one I ever did was called The Finding of the Third Eye by Vera Stanley Alder, which I've now read twice.
Right.
And it just was huge. It just went crazy. And so I said, wow, people really responded to that and like that. And so I said, well, what else would you like me to read? Give me some requests, send me stuff. And I had never really been a big person that was into Sitchin. I had studied, ancient Sumerian, Mesopotamian history and studied all that kind of stuff on my own, but had never really looked into Sitchin because everybody kind of told me not to, so I didn't bother with it. And one day I got an email from someone saying, can you read this? I think you should read this on your show, The Lost Book of Enki by Zachariah Sitchin. So I said, okay, and I did read that book, and I think it must have took 7 or 8 months.
Well, how many videos is it? I don't even know.
I don't even know. That's the funny thing, Jimmy, is that that thing has actually gone on to be the biggest thing I've ever done. It's gotten more hits than my own videos on my own channel have. It's just went completely bonkers on its own, as well as the reading of the Emerald Tablets of Thoth that I did. There's several of them out there, but every time I get an email from somebody, a new listener, everybody wants more of that. And it's, again, one of those happy accidents that I just did. Just because somebody asked me to do it. But I really learned a lot from that reading of the Lost Book of Enki by Zachariah Sitchin. And what I do in there, and as you mentioned earlier, people, what I do is not PG on my show. I'm happy to go on anybody else's show and be completely G-rated. But on my show, we open it up and get pretty raunchy and get in there. And the Sitchin readings are no different. But we like to inject humor and like to inject some stuff in there to kind of take the gravity off, because some of these topics that you get into are so heavy and can weigh on your mind and your heart so much sometimes that it's kind of good to have the comic relief a little bit in there. And that's what I've tried to do with these readings. But I was just really shocked, Jimmy, when you mentioned that you were familiar with that reading there.
I listen to it all the time. I really do. I really do. And I'm suggesting to the audience right now, just go do your YouTube search, Josh Reeves, Lost Book of Enki, and start with part 1, and good luck to you. It's very, very, very cool. You're right though. Some of it really makes me crack up because you'll just stop and comment, and it's colorful. It's not G-rated,
no.
but it's very cool. So now let's stop with Sitchin for a second, because
okay.
I know that you researched all of that, the Sumerian culture. Then you read Sitchin. Are you absorbing Sitchin as you read it? And does it stay with you? And does it conflict with your previous research? I mean, how do you come out of the other side?
Well, I think that when you listen to it, when you listen to all those readings, Jimmy, it really you really see how I come out on the other side, which is what I do is I confirm, like when I hear something, when I hear him on the right track and I hear him talk about things that I can, with my own research and my own reading, confirm to be true, I'll let you know that. At the same time, if I hear something that conflicts with it and I think is, in my opinion, BS, I will let you know that too. I'll just be upfront about it. So I think that for me, I didn't really come out on the end of it liking Sitchin any more than I did going into it. But I feel like that I had elements of the bigger picture and things that I was kind of on the cusp of finding myself that I kind of got the puzzle pieces for a little bit more. So I did get something positive out of those experiences, but I didn't walk away, a dyed-in-the-wool believer. Because the fact of the matter is, those texts and those writings exist. They do exist. There are actual Sumerian texts. There are actual clay tablets. These stories do exist there. But just because I see this a lot, and it's a problem. Just because somebody is, a goofball or a clown or, whatever it may be you want to call them, doesn't mean that they might not have some truth mixed in with their goofballness. And I think that's the whole shoot the messenger thing is the problem with a lot of research. A lot of people will overlook certain areas of research or certain piece of information they should be into strictly because they don't like the person delivering it. And of course, I've ran into that. There are people that don't like me and don't like my style or whatever, but then that's fine. But the fact of the matter is, if you actually listen to my research and you watch my films and you look at where I'm going with this stuff, you will get something out of it. You will gain something you didn't have before. I always try to take people those places that are, sometimes scary to go down, but I'm willing to go there in the name of the research because that's the number one most important priority to me. And I don't try to beat anybody over the head with anything, Jimmy, or get anybody to think like me. I always encourage people to take what I've done, look at it, research for themselves, and come to their own conclusions. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters, not what somebody tells you to think.
Well, before I don't want to belabor this, but I want to be clear. Before, did you flip-flop on Sitchin?
No.
Okay, explain.
Well, I don't understand what you mean.
What I mean is before your stance on Sitchin, has it changed over the years? Is that what I guess that's where I'm going?
I think it hasn't changed, not one bit, because I've always, from the beginning, seen him and a lot of other researchers and people out there. Again, it's just like rat poison. A good percentage of rat poison is grain that won't hurt you. It's that other couple of percentage points in there that is what kills you. And that's that way with Sitchin with a lot of researchers. I mean, a lot of what he says is true and can be verified, but there's a lot that can't. So what I feel my job is to do with these readings that I've done of the Sitchin books, and I've done 3 or 4 just because people have asked me to do it. But what I do in all of those is, again, I go in there and for people who don't have the years of research that I have to be able to discern what is the good stuff he's telling you and what isn't, that's where I come in, and with my comments, I interject and say, hey, I'm going to give him credit here. He's right on. This is right. This verifies this. But this over here, specifically the big one I have with him is the Nibiru thing.
Right. That's where I was going now. Okay.
That's where I part ways with him as far as the theories. To me, because when I read the actual text and the translations, that thing is not in there, or at least the way that he interpreted it to be is not in there at all. And that does absolutely seem like it was some sort of fabrication to fit an agenda or something else. But that's the big one.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I'm right there as you and I are eyeball to eyeball. Where did he get it from? Was it, it had to come from somewhere, or was it just totally fiction?
No. It's in there. But the way that he presents it as being there, as being this, this planet that comes around every so often, and this was the home of them, and it's going to return and all this. It doesn't really seem to be presented that way when you read it. It seems to me to be something more like, maybe more like a ship, or maybe something like a supernova that exploded at some certain time. I mean, there is so much gray area for interpretation there of what it could actually be, that for any one person to build a career off saying it's absolutely this without anything to back it up, it needs to be pointed out.
Right. And with all of the ancients, pick out a civilization. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't care if it's Chinese, Peruvian, Mayan, Egyptian, Sumerian. Pick somebody. It doesn't matter. Northern Europe. It doesn't matter. Pick something out. Everybody mapped everything. That's all they did was look at the sky and look at the stars. They knew. I don't know how they pulled it off, but they had everything figured out. And what hasn't been confirmed is no other society has mentioned Nibiru at all. If it was somewhere else in some other ancient text, we could all say, aha, okay. Because they all knew about Jupiter, Mars, the constellations, astrology, astronomy. Everything was there. And they knew a lot. They knew an awful lot. It blows my mind when I go outside, look at the stars, and think, how did they know this 3,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago? How did they know? Because I look up and I just see stars.
Right.
But they were able to do that. And the one thing that is missing is Nibiru in all the other text.
The only thing that's ever been found, I think, that's been probably has been used to misinterpret this Nibiru thing. There was actually a constellation, like a glyph, found in Iraq, in ancient Samaria, that shows our sun, it shows our planets in the exact order they are around the sun, but it shows 2 additional planets. Not 1, but 2. And no one's ever really been able to explain that. As far as we know, they didn't have telescopes back then and the rest of that stuff. But what's fascinating, and people can see this by watching my Lost Secrets of Ancient America film, a lot of stuff from the Mesopotamian culture, a lot of hints and indicators and things that go back to that have been found all over the world in places like America even. But as you mentioned, what has not been found is anything remotely concerning this Nibiru thing anywhere else. And again, I think it's just been a red herring from the start.
But I want to believe. I want to believe.
Let me throw this at you, Jimmy. I think from my research, there is just as much of a chance that the supposed people who came from Nibiru came from somewhere inside of the Earth as they did from outer space. I'm going to put it to you like that.
Interesting. I just had, we're at the bottom of the hour. Let's just get this out of the way because this next question is very important. This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We are talking with Josh Reeves. Josh, let's talk about the wall in Dallas. And I just had on Scott Walter last week, and I know you know exactly where I'm going right now. He says natural.
Right.
Okay, so let's tell us about the Dallas Wall, and then we'll get to his conclusions after you answer.
Okay, how much time do we have here?
We got all you need.
Okay, this might take a minute. Yes, that is something that has been of very, very important, large importance to me this year. I started researching and finding out about this Rockwall thing. It's actually not in Dallas. It's actually in a town that's in the suburbs of Dallas that's actually called Rockwall. And that's actually a funny thing about that is, too, Jimmy, that's actually where Alex Jones is actually from. He grew up and went to school in this town, Rockwall. And underneath this town, back in the when it was first, even before it was incorporated as a town, they found this, every time they try to dig up water wells in this town, they would get down to the bottom and they start hitting rock. And there's even people at the time knew that is absolutely zero naturally occurring rock in this entire area of North Texas. It just geologically is not a place where there is any natural rock. So any rock that's found in this area had to have been brought in from an outside source. And they started finding all these rocks. They started finding evidence of this mortar substance that was between these rocks. They knew it was old, and two of the founding members of the town before it was named Rockwall, they were kind of all arguing over who was going to name.
We just went, I just lost signal. So everybody just stay with us. Keith, run some music. This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. All right, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Another, little glitch, not that big of a deal. Josh is with us. Josh, how you doing? Everything good?
Oh, yeah, I'm good to go.
Okay, all right. We were right at the good stuff. We were talking about Sitchin, and I don't believe, we changed gears and we went to the Dallas Wall.
Yes, I remember exactly where we're at, so it's fine.
Okay, so then let me ask you this question really quick. Are you suggesting that there's nothing but dirt when you say there's no rocks? Help me out with that thought.
Well, there's no naturally occurring rock in the air. I mean, of course, there's bedrock. If you go down past the dirt, there's bedrock. But what they call this soil here is post-diluvial soil. I mean, it's soil that washed in from somewhere after this massive flood event, which definitely ties into this Rockwall thing. But the long and the short of it is, the question you asked me was, tell people what the Rockwall is if they don't know about it, and then give my take on the America Unearthed thing. But with the wall, basically what it is, if people don't know, it's a 20-mile diameter structure that's buried under the town of Rockwall. Don't send me 100 emails asking me how you can go see it. Every time I go to a show, I get 1,000 emails. How can I go see the wall? You can. It's buried underneath the town. Much of the town is built on top of it. It's a 20-mile diameter structure that is, and a lot of these things really indicate, what I'm about to tell you, indicate my problem with the American Earth Show, because a lot of the evidence that is known about this wall was not even allowed to be brought to the table on that broadcast. Things like it being leveled at 550 feet above sea level, the entire structure. The only way you could have done that would have been to, by hand and manually go in and level this thing before it was built. No matter how the terrain changes, the wall itself sits at 550 feet above sea level. It's made up of, and this is the main thing, they did not introduce into the show the makeup, the stone makeup, and more appropriately, the crystalline makeup of this rock wall. They did not introduce this information at all. They had a dig. Why didn't they do the testing on the stones at the dig? Instead, they do the supposed test on stones that could have came from anywhere on someone's property that didn't actually come from, may not have actually come from the rock wall. But what they were stones that were, as they say in the show, taken from the 1976 dig that were taken from very close to the surface of the wall itself. Now, when excavations have been done, it has been found out that somebody much later in history actually added on to this wall much later after it was built. The estimates of the wall put it somewhere in the range of 220,000 years old. This has been based on a lot of the analysis that's been done on the stones and the different dating, but that was the main crux of the issue for America Unearthed. They did not reveal what the wall is made out of. They tried to say, it's limestone or this. It's actually been analyzed multiple times since 1945 all the way to 1999, and in every case they find that it's made of zircon, garnet, tourmaline, rutile. It's also made of an element called starlite. And then it also has some rare earth elements in it, titanite, brookite, and also one called niobium. Now, niobium is interesting, and that's one of the more interesting things about this wall, is the structural engineering that went into this is beyond what, in many cases, we have even today. And things like the entire structure being built with a buttressing effect, meaning that this wall has built into it the ability for it to withstand live loads, live heavy, big things on top of it for sustained periods of time. It also produces piezoelectrical energy. This is a result of the crystalline compound and makeup of the stones, which is exactly why the America Unearthed thesis of it being a natural formation does not fly, because all of these elements that are ground up to make these cast stones of the wall, titanite, brookite, tourmaline, starlite, rutile, zircon, all of them, they all form naturally in nature on a host matrix, meaning tourmaline forms on a quartz matrix, on and on and on. These stones exist in a ground-up form, not on their natural matrix in these cast stones of the wall. Now, if someone extracted all that from stone, there would be literally millions of tons of just quartz rock left over. So somewhere there's got to be a bunch of discarded quartz, right? Well, that's where the geopolymer mortar substance that's been analyzed, and that's what they called it when they analyzed it in a lab, is the geopolymer mortar substance. It's made of 3 different types of quartz crystals, all brought from different locations around the globe, and then mixed together to make a waterproof seal that these stones are sealed together with. And because of their quartz matrix, you can never do an accurate paleomagnetic data on the rock wall. Now, that's their main crux in the show, is that they did paleomagnetic data survey on the wall, and that if it was a natural formation, that it would be completely uniform, and that if it was an unnatural formation or man-made, the electromagnetic signature of the wall would be just going everywhere nuts because you'd have all these pieces brought in, so it wouldn't be uniform. Well, what they didn't introduce into the show, and what they didn't bother telling people, is that quartz itself, anything that has any large amount of a quartz material in it, can never be properly analyzed during a paleomagnetic data survey. Because of the nature of crystal, of quartz, it puts out a magnetic signature that will always give you a false positive when you do a test on it. Now, they also didn't mention that the guy who originally did the paleomagnetic data survey back in 1999, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Wolf Goss from the University of Texas, got so freaked out when he did the paleomagnetic data survey that he won't even allow his findings to be published until after he's dead. But all of a sudden, American Earth is just okay with, they're able to get one. No, they didn't give accurate information. People can go to my website and theglobalreality.com, and when you go under the tab where you can buy all my documentaries and movies there's a tab that says Bud Shelton's Geological Report, and you can click on that, and it's a free download, doesn't cost anything. And one can read that entire paleomagnetic, it's got all the paleomagnetic data, it's got all the geological data concerning the rock wall. And bear in mind, the person that wrote this believes the rock wall himself to be a natural formation. But he says explicitly in there that paleomagnetic data on the rock wall, such as what is conducted on American Earth, cannot be accurate due to the large quartz makeup of this geopolymer mortar substance that butters these stones exactly as a stonemason would do. Going back to the structural engineering thing, it being leveled at 550 feet above sea level, the buttressing built into it, but also this element niobium. Now, if people look up niobium, they'll understand that we didn't even learn how to use niobium until the late 1800s. And what we use that for now is strictly structural engineering. It's an element that you can combine with other metals, other elements that acts as a huge conductor. If you were doing any kind of activity producing energy or anything like that would produce as a byproduct a large amount of heat, adding niobium to it allows you to be able to perform that process without getting the excess heat that is produced by it. This rock wall contains in large amounts niobium. That is a structural engineering element we use in skyscrapers. We use it in big pipelines. We use it in spacecraft. Anything where we need it to be absolutely reinforced and withstand heat, we use niobium in. Now, how come these things were not allowed to be on that show? The rock wall is not an open and shut case. They have been attempting to cover this up for years. They didn't try to even have that show until after I released the first ever movie about it in 2013, and the cover-up continues. But the fact of the matter, what people need to know is that it is not what they told you it is on there. And if you watch my films and listen to the stuff that I talk about, you'll be able to see the evidence of that.
With Scott, I have 20 questions. I'm going to do this one first. With Scott, wouldn't it have been advantageous to him? I like Scott. I think Scott's, we need guys like Scott that think outside the box, and I know you can appreciate that. But wouldn't it be advantageous for Scott to show that it was man-made? I mean, why go the other route?
It's not up to him. I don't, just like we were talking about Obama or Bush or anybody else, I don't assign all of the blame or whatever. I mean, the fact of the matter is, Jimmy, even if he himself thought that this thing was a man-made formation wasn't natural, he would not be able to put that out on that show. I mean, if you watch my newest film, The Lost Secrets of Ancient America Volume 2, and you find out who actually owns the History Channel, and you look into the history of who actually owns it and puts out those shows, you'll see for yourself that, it doesn't matter what Scott Walter believes. He's got a big vehicle, but at the end of the day, he's going to have to go with whatever they tell him to go with. And I don't know this for a fact, but I have the opinion just, that he probably does think the truth of it is something other than what they've told. But, because of the powers that be not allowing that to be out there, he's got to go with whatever they tell him to go with. That's what I think's going on.
You say that it's approximately 20 miles. Now, is it a perfect circle?
No, it's a square type structure. Actually, later on, I'll send you I don't have it on me right now, but I can actually send you over a copy of the map so you can see how big it is, see what it looks like.
What's in the center?
The town.
Okay. Well, if it's if we're looking at piezoelectric attributes and other things, it seems like it would focus into the center. I mean, is there something significant in the center that would be under the ground?
Well, possibly. I mean, there's that gets into the realm of speculation, Jimmy. But there is a.
What's the intention of an enclosure like that unless you're focusing at something into the center?
Well, here's the thing, though, Jimmy. I haven't really given you all the information yet. One of the other things I didn't mention on the American Earth show that I think is a huge fact is that it's been proven beyond any shadow of a doubt that one of the purposes of this thing was to be and act as a seawall, meaning the ocean at one point came up right to where Rockwall is now. And it happened at a time when people were actually building structures. Now, how do we know that? We know that because, again, not mentioned on the History Channel, this has happened at 4 or 5 different independent digs that have happened through the years since about the 1940s. But in every one of them, the further that you dig down, this is another interesting thing, the further you dig down, the larger these stones get. And what's been found is things like shark's teeth embedded into the outside of the wall. They found, the dig team last time found sand dollars, fresh sand dollars in the bottom that when you cracked them open had fresh meat in them. They weren't petrified like they'd been there for thousands of years. They were fresh. This was a wall that served as a not only a seawall, but an enclosure from some kind of a city. And almost directly in the middle of where it would be, what would be the center of the wall is the old Rockwall courthouse. And this is about as close as anybody can get to seeing parts of the wall because they have a few stones from it and a little small effigy of the wall with the stones kind of thrown together with some concrete there in front of the old courthouse. And this is dead center in the middle of where the wall is. And there was news reports of some guys, I think in the late 1800s, early 1900s, finding a tunnel that went from the closest, nearest water source, which is the Trinity River, which runs through Dallas. They found an underground tunnel that led from this water source, the Trinity River, all the way into what they described as a dome-lined rock room, temple room, which now sits underneath this old-timey Rockwall courthouse where they have part of the wall at. And that's what seems to be in the center. There was some sort of these underground chambers. I mean, somebody had the reason to build something, a tunnel where they could get to the only freshwater source around it and do it underground without somebody being seen or seeing them on the outside. Now, what could that be? A lot of people have speculated because they found giant skeletons near around the rock wall that possibly this was built as, a defensive structure against them. We don't really know. But the fact of the matter is, when I started my investigation into this rock wall, I wanted to see what else had been found around the United States. Was there anything else? At that point, I didn't know. But I wanted to find out if there was anything else like this that had been found anywhere around the United States. And that's kind of where I set my my research at. I started looking into the giant thing. I started looking into the mound things because we see a lot of those around the rock wall. And again, I get into all this in both volumes of the film, but it's a very, very unbelievable thing with this rock wall because when you start to get into how it was built, you start to see that the technology it took to build it's beyond anything we have today. And I think that's where the intention to cover up really comes from.
How far down is it?
It goes down roughly just shy of 100 feet.
Okay.
Down to the bedrock.
Okay.
And it sits right on the bedrock.
Sits on the bedrock. How much dirt is above the top of the wall? What's the depth?
I mean, again, from the dirt, from the ground, from the dirt to the bottom, it's 100 feet. So, I mean, I guess it would be that same amount.
No, I mean, how tall is the wall? I mean, how much dirt, how much excavation has to occur to get down to this?
Well, that's the thing. You would have to, again, you'd have to go down about 100 feet. History Channel said they went down roughly 17 or 18 feet.
Right.
I mean, no one's even really scratched the surface yet of this thing, Jimmy. Again, the conclusions that people have come to about this thing yet are not justified strictly because there hasn't even been a proper dig yet to even document this stuff. That's my major goal with this film series, The Lost Secrets of Ancient America. I want it to eventually culminate in our own independent dig that we conduct ourselves with our own cameras and our own people, where we document all the stuff that's been found about the wall, and we document it and we show it on film, because that hasn't been done yet. No one's done that yet. And in my opinion, you're not going to convince anybody of anything until you show them on camera. Look, here's the analysis of the stones. Here's what they're made out of. Here's the piezoelectrical energy output. You know, none of these things have been done, and no one has properly documented these yet. And that's kind of what I've made my personal mission for the past 10 years to do. That's why I'm continuing to research this, because until we at least have the evidence documented in a way where it can be presented to everyone to see, the opinion on it is never going to change. And that's going to take independent people like me and others who just want to do this and want the truth to come out. It's certainly not going to happen or be funded by the powers that be.
No, it's not easy to do. I mean, as you know, we did the discovery of the Malibu base out here off of the coast of California. And, you know, I get the question every single day, you know, so when are you guys going out? When are you guys going on? You know, well, it's not easy to do. And there's logistics. You know, we're close, but you are facing the same thing that we're facing out there. You just don't go out and show up with a bobcat, with a backhoe, and, you know, start digging in the city of Dallas down I don't know how many feet. I can't imagine. Now, what about the universities? I mean, who and how close are you, do you think, to actually breaking ground?
Well, the problem of it is not actually, to be honest with you, Jimmy, it's not really hard to find any place to go dig around. And actually, because it's Texas, you actually can go out there and just dig around anywhere. Really, we just need somebody. And I actually have been working on this. We have one person who's come forward recently in the past month who says that they have some on their property and would be willing to have a dig be done on their property. Really, we just it's just money. I mean, that's the main thing. We need as soon as we have a budget to be able to do it and have a budget to be able to rent the equipment and call in the teams of people to come and work on it, you know, we'll be able to do it. But really, that's the main thing, and that holds everything back. And again, we just want to create something where people once and for all can come to their own conclusions on it. At the end of the day, after we have a dig and we get all this evidence documented and we show it on film, at the end of the day, if there are still people that say it's a natural formation, that's fine. But I really, really think that there are just so many amazing things about this that really warrant a further investigation. Really, it does not deserve to just be brushed off as some natural formation when there's so much voluminous evidence to the contrary.
Were you able to talk to Scott when he was out there?
No, it was kind of a funny set of circumstances that surrounded that. I don't know how. I don't know how this happened, but right around the time when that was going on last year, I just somehow, that information didn't get to me that it was going on. And right around that time, I was getting ready to make my first appearance on Coast to Coast AM, and I was, you know, kind of distracted with that and getting ready for that. And I went back a couple of months later and went, you know what? I'll be darned. That whole thing was going on the exact same time when I was getting prepared to be on Coast to Coast AM. So it you know, it didn't happen. So I don't know. I don't want to say that was something intentional on somebody's part or anything, but I just flat didn't even hear that it was going to happen until it was all over with.
He didn't contact you before he headed out there? Wow.
No.
Huh.
And you know what's funny? There's actually a part in the American Earth episode. There's actually a part where he quotes me directly quotes me directly, and I never got contacted. So, but again, at first I'll be honest with you, at first I was kind of, hard on Walter himself. But looking at this and stuff, I mean, again, I don't to say that he has 100% control over what the History Channel puts out. That's giving him too much credit. I think that, I think there probably is a lot of stuff he does think contrary to, but, just can't do it because he doesn't have that kind of power.
Well, yeah, I mean, I asked him that last week. I asked very directly, and I don't want to quote him. You can go listen to the show, but I said, how much control do you have about what the show covers? And I think he said, it's up to the producers. They write it. I'm given the stuff and we go out and do the show. Some of the shows I have input on. Some of the stuff I want, obviously the Kensington Runestone is all his, but it's show ideas and it's written above and away from him, and so I can appreciate that. And I think you might be right there. And this show was probably a show. You know what I mean? He was the host of that show.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely what the case is. Yeah, this is not him doing his, thing that he put together on his own network or something or independent. This is being put out by them on their dime. So you realistically, even if I was in the same situation, to him, it would be the same thing. I wouldn't be able to go on a History Channel show and say the things I'm saying on your show now, Jimmy. I'd have to say things that went in line with what they wanted the show to be about. That's what producers do.
Yes, sir. Now, this is the Smithsonian has been brought up on this show now probably the past 5, 6, 7 shows over the last week or two. Do you think, you brought it up earlier, so I'm just going to throw it out there now. I have my beliefs, but it's about you. It's not about me. Do you think they're holding back? You think they're suppressing?
The evidence is in spades in that. That was when I was working. I started working on the Lost Secrets of Ancient America, Volume 1. It was like a 10-year project, but really over the couple of years, 2011, 2012, before I released Volume 1 last year, that was one of the things that I was really getting into when I started writing Volume 1, was looking at how much of my what's the word I'm looking for here? How much of my paths and my research trails always ended with a dead end at the Smithsonian. A very interesting example of that is this coin that was found in a water well in the state of Illinois. Now, this coin, which people can see in my film, was in the said to be in the ownership of the Smithsonian Institution. It depicted a strange crowned woman, almost like a Statue of Liberty type of looking woman, with some interestingly undecipherable hieroglyphs on it. Now, this coin was found in this well in a soil strata that dated to 220,000 years, right at the same target range as we've had for the Rockwall. Now, in the 1940s, there was a giant stone, a 2.5-ton garnet stone, which is now said by local Rockwall sources and people that I've talked to, is now said to be in the possession of a prominent Rockwall congressman, former U.S. Congressman Ralph Hall, who just for the first time got out of office this year. He's said to be the one that's in possession of this. Now, this 2.5-ton garnet stone found in Rockwall had a type of hieroglyphics that has never been found anywhere on Earth, and they matched identically with the hieroglyphs found on this coin in Illinois that dated to 220,000 years. Now, a gentleman who, by the name of, it's John Lindsay, he did a lot of the research on the Rockwall and did the last Rockwall dig in 1999. I met with him in 2008 and started getting a lot of information and stuff from him. And coincidentally enough, when I went to his house, one of the first things I saw was a picture of him with Zachariah Sitchin. And I went, okay, this is interesting. So he spent all this time, trying to basically ease me into what I already, the conclusion I'd already come to myself. But one of the interesting things that that he had talked about and mentioned, this John Lindsay guy, was that oh gosh, I just lost my complete train of thought.
We're talking about the coin, the rock,
the
and
coin and the
Hall.
rock, right. Well, he had gone to the Smithsonian itself and asked to get video and footage of this coin. And they said, sure, we've got it. No problem. Come on down. You can have as much time as you want with it. You can have pictures. I mean, and it was like, oh, wow, this is a breakthrough. This is going to happen. We're going to get hard proof. So he travels all the way to Washington, goes to the Smithsonian, and he gets there. And, of course, they tell him, oh, we're sorry. We don't know where that is. We lost it. Yeah, it's just gone, and we're sorry. And that's happened time and again whenever researchers have found out about specific artifacts and specific items that the Smithsonian has in their possession. And then when they go to get footage of it or hard evidence, it just magically disappears. I mean, there's been stories of them dumping dump truck loads of artifacts into the ocean. They admittedly, whenever they find an ancient artifact that has a language on it that they can't identify, that doesn't match some other existing language, they destroy the artifacts. I mean, this kind of practice cannot be considered in line with telling the truth.
With the rock and the hieroglyphs from the Rockwall and the coin, have you compared them yourselves?
Yes.
You've seen both?
Yes, we have both. Both are in Lost Secrets of Ancient America, Volume 1.
I would like to see these. I'd like to see the pictures and the comparisons. I haven't seen the video.
Well, I'll send you over some downloads, Jimmy, after the show.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And are they identical?
Well, they're you have to judge for yourself. I don't want to, I'm not going to put that on. I'm going to let you, I'll send you the video and I'll let you go and check it for yourself. And I can also send over some pictures. I'll let you check it yourself. In my opinion, they're identical. In the opinion of other researchers that have looked at them, yes, they are identical. And again, this kind of strange Statue of Liberty looking person, in this ancient coin, again, soil strata, 220,000 years old. There's nothing else that's ever matched either one of these other than these two items. And again, this Sanders stone, this 2.5-ton garnet stone, which contained these, being hoisted out. It was actually held for a long time in the old Rockwall courthouse I mentioned earlier, where they have the little Rockwall effigy at. It was held in there for a long time. And back in, I guess, it was the late 80s or 90s, a bunch of inmates witnessed Congressman Ralph Hall and some of these other guys hauling this thing out of what was then, it was in the jail back when Rockwall was still a small town. The jail and the courthouse were all there. I can remember driving by it when I was a kid, and you could see jailbirds up in the top, just hanging out of the top of it, just right there. So they, you could see anything that was going on around the outside of this thing. And supposedly that's when they saw this heist going down. And my sources that I've talked to around Rockwall and stuff say that, it's safe and eventually it'll come out again. But again, anytime there ever has been smoking gun evidence of this wall and whatnot, it always gets suppressed. But what they can't keep suppressed is this mineralogical data that people can see in that geology report and download at my website. That's what speaks for itself. When you see that and you understand that this was not allowed to be put out on that show, that should pique everyone's interest that there's definitely more going on to this than meets the eye.
This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network, bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your humble host, Jimmy Church. We're speaking with guest Josh Reeves. You want to take some phone calls?
Sure.
Yeah, let's bang some phone calls. 323-825-5045. You can also Skype in at Fade to Black 14. And while we're waiting for some phone calls to come in, have you? Let's change gears. Let's have some fun. Have you ever seen a UFO?
Oh, I've been seeing those things my whole life, really. That was kind of, actually, it's good that you asked that. Kind of segues into the Rockwall thing, because that was really what led me on to the Rockwall thing and made me want to research it, because around the area of Rockwall, I kind of grew up, not in Rockwall, but kind of on the outer skirts of that. It kind of goes out into the country. You have like Dallas, you have the suburbs, and it starts to get, more and more country the farther you go out. And my whole life living around the area of Rockwall, myself, my friends' parents, everybody always had stories of lights in the sky, seeing strange things. And when I was about 15 or 16 years old, when I first learned how to drive and stuff, my friend and I chased a UFO all the way from north of Rockwall all the way to Rockwall until it got right to where the Rockwall was, and it zoomed at high speed and sped off into the atmosphere. And, at that time, we didn't know anything about the Rockwall. And I had all these experiences and knew all these people that had seen stuff. around that area. We actually had a missing time event. Me and the same friend years later, we had a missing time event near where the Rockwall is, where it was 1 o'clock when we were crossing this bridge. And when we got to the other side of the bridge, we were on our way to work, and we looked, and the clock said 5 o'clock. And we were like, this can't be right. And we called home, and we were like, hey, what time did we leave for work today? And they're like, what, are you on drugs? You left at 12 or whatever. And we were in shock. We were in complete shock. So I had all these stories for years and all these experiences around this area that had to do with paranormal and UFOs and missing time and everything else. And so in 2004, when I was reading Jim Marr's book, the great book, Rule by Secrecy, which is a great primer for people who want to get a little bit of all this stuff in one book, I was reading this paragraph in the book, and at the end it said, maybe one day we'll get answers to all the questions of the things we seek. Maybe things such as the ancient Rockwall in Rockwall, Texas. And that was as much as I had, was just that sentence that said the ancient Rockwall in Rockwall, Texas. And some kind of light went off in my head where I instantly knew that had some kind of connection with all of these UFO sightings, missing time, all of this strange stuff that myself and other people I knew have experienced our whole life. I immediately knew that. And, Jimmy, here I am 10 years later, getting ready to make my third film on this subject. And I can't tell you that my opinion about that's changed. I definitely still believe there is a major connection to that.
I'd like to welcome Ken. Ken, how you doing? Say hi to Josh Reeves.
Hey, Mr. Church. How you doing, Mr. Reeves? How you doing tonight?
Hey, doing well.
What you got, Ken?
Well, I'm going to try and remain calm. Josh, I used to be a big fan of yours. I first heard you on Red Ice like maybe 5 years ago or something like that. And I started watching all your interviews and doing all that stuff. And then it was like 6 months ago, I saw that you were backing off Sitchin. And I was curious, what made you stop believing? Because I'd heard all your interviews before that, and you were a big fan of them. And then all of a sudden, it seemed like you backed way off them. And I was wondering what happened to make you.
Well, nothing. That's absolutely false. I mean, I'm sorry that you somehow took from my statements or my other shows. But anybody I've got tons of people who can testify to this, that I've never, ever, ever been a fan of Sitchin, to the point where you can actually go on YouTube and see a video I made like 4 years ago where I'm explaining why I'm reading the Sitchin book. And I explain that in that video very clearly, that I'm not a fan of his, never was a fan of his, but I was reading his work so that, because it was important for me, because for years I kind of did what a lot of people do with some stuff. I just, instead of actually reading what the guy had to say for myself, I was just dismissing his work altogether based on stuff people had told me. So when someone suggested that I read the Sitchin book, the first one, the Lost Book of Enki, on my show, I said, you know what, I'll do that. Not because, and I said this from the very beginning, so I'm sorry that you took that the wrong way, but from the very beginning, I've never been a fan of Sitchin. And I said from the very beginning, look, I'm only reading this for information purposes. I'm reading this so that, we can see and decide for ourselves, instead of having somebody decide for us, what is good about his work and what isn't. And was my intent from the very beginning. So I never, a lot of the things that I talk about, a lot of the stuff that I get into may give someone the impression that I agree with Sitchin. But again, Sitchin does not own ancient Sumerian research. He does not own ancient Mesopotamian research. That stuff exists without him ever being in the picture. But every time you bring that stuff up, someone has to throw Sitchin in. And after a while, it starts to make you think, okay, well, maybe that's what his role is as a gatekeeper, is to, anytime you bring it up, someone will just say, well, that doesn't agree with Sitchin, so it must not be true. You see what I mean? And that puts us in a situation where with that, it doesn't matter how much new information or new research we find. It becomes this dogmatic thing where Sitchin becomes almost like religion. And if you say anything outside of that, you're somehow a heretic. And that's been something I've done from the very beginning. I've called out researchers. I've exposed other people who are not on the right board. Go watch my Secret Right series of films. You'll see all that. But I've never, ever, ever once ever been on board with Sitchin. And I, from the very beginning, have always only used his work as a reference point to point out to people what they should be into and what they should take as the truth and what they should.
Okay, so like I said, I'm trying to remain calm. I understand what you're saying about, it's almost like heresy to go against Sitchin. But the reason why Sitchin is so great is that academia had this stupid idea of religion, and it was translating the whole thing of like the Old Testament and all that crap about, you know, God making the firmament. And then Sitchin had the idea that maybe something was being mistranslated. So he went and learned the ancient Sumerian himself and went back and translated all the books. And then everyone started using his research and crapping all over
I'm not
him.
arguing with you. Listen, I'm not arguing with you on that. There are a lot of the scholarly translations of the text that when you go and look at them, they match identically to what Sitchin said. That's not what I'm saying, sir. That's not what I'm saying at all. You're trying to spin this into something it's not. The fact of the matter is, I never, ever once in my life was ever 100% on board with Sitchin. I never even touched his work, read a shred of it until someone asked me to read that book on my show. I come to my own conclusions, and everything I believe about this stuff comes from my own research, not what Sitchin said. If what I say agrees with stuff that he said, fine. If it doesn't agree with it, that's fine too. But, you know, whether or not he was doing scholarly translations has nothing to do with the fact that the Nibiru thing was a red herring and was used as a scaremonger.
All right. You made your point about Nibiru. You made your point about Nibiru before. What about the Dogon? Explain the Dogon. If Sitchin just came out of nowhere with this Nibiru, out of nowhere, then how did an African tribe that had no contact with Western civilization come up with the exact same thing?
Okay,
the Dogon don't have anything to do with Nibiru. They correlate to Sirius.
Yeah. Hey, Ken, I'm going to address the Dogon directly myself too. And
okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. All the best.
I stay calm.
Yeah, hey, Ken, this is what the show is about.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, Josh knows that.
You guys have a good night.
Yeah, thank you.
You too.
Thank you. And I'm going to bring in another call here too, and put them on hold, but they can hear us. Is this one thing about the Dogon, and I want everybody to be to understand my position on this. The Dogon didn't have anything to do with Sirius until the British got there, and so the thought of the Dogon and running around in spacesuits and Sirius and the knowledge of a dual star constellation and everything else that didn't happen 300 years ago, 400 years ago, 500 years ago. That only happened post-modern times. And now, I could be completely wrong, but my research says that. And that's where I stand on the Dogon. The Dogon, urban legend that has propagated itself. And that's where I stand on the Dogon. I know I've just offended so many researchers out there. But I want to believe. I would love for the Dogon to have been worshiping Sirius and the knowledge of the stars and stuff that we've only known in modern times. But that's simply not the case. All right, I'd like to welcome. Where are you calling? Who's calling? Where are you calling from? You're live on the air. Well, they are there. I see them. Okay, if you can hear us, call back. All right. And yeah, so yeah, the Dogon and that has to do with Sirius and not Nibiru. Okay, here's the
That's first I heard that. I've never heard that connection before.
Yeah, me too. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Rick calling from Vegas.
Hey, Rick in Vegas. How are you tonight, sir?
Hey, I'm doing good. You can hear me now.
Yes, I can. Say hi to Josh.
Hey, Josh. How's it going?
Hey, doing well. How are you, Rick?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Cool. I can hear you, too. Hey, something you touched on earlier about gun control. Kind of like the Dogon. I have a few issues with that really being the government's end game, because what it'll just end up doing is creating a really great black market. And if you're going to get in trouble for having a handgun, well, hey, up the ante, go full broke, get an AK-47. And if there is some sort of uprising with the United States, it would end up being like the insurgents in the Middle East. So if it is, a plot to take away the guns, what's the end game, really? Because the military equipment is far superior to what we have.
Okay.
Well, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Josh.
Oh, well, I didn't really have anything to add to that. No, I mean, he's
exactly right.
I mean, I don't think any of us have the answer for that. You're absolutely right. I mean, okay, they want to take the guns. All right. So what? But again, the weapons that they have and these ability to be able to, the stuff they have now where they can tell, where a gun was fired from miles away. I mean, the stuff that we even know about, let's just say that, much less the top secret military technology, dwarfs anything that the rest of the people are out there. So there's got to be something else more to it. And I think that's one of those ends of the rabbit hole that a lot of people, Rick, I think are scared to talk about. I think that a lot of this stuff, you start getting to a point, and I got to that point in my research, when I started trying to, for years, figure out who was on top and which was the tip top of the groups and who was really running the show. I started noticing that the farther up that I went up the food chain, the more I got into this area where it didn't, it started to appear, wait a minute, what if these people that are running this planet really aren't on the planet itself? And that, that could be an uncomfortable place to go to. And I think that's the same thing with the gun. People don't really want to even think about, okay, let's say, for instance, you're right. Let's say, for instance, it is all about gun control. I don't believe that, but let's just say, for an instance, they do that. What is the end of it? And I think that it's going to require, before any of this plays out, it's going to require more of their events. I think the merging of religion and science and the doing away with the dogmatic beliefs of either one of those into this world science, religion, worship thing. I think that's going to be a big one, but I think a lot of things are still going to happen before we're going to know just why all of these things that we've been seeing happen since 9/11 have been happening. I think there is going to be a big payoff, a big end game at the end of it, but I think it's really speculation. Nobody really knows what that's going to be.
Yeah, one of the points that I think where Rick was leading with that, and correct me, Rick, if I'm wrong, is you're just going to create a black market. If somebody wants something, they're going to get it. Whether, look at heroin, look at cocaine, look at anything that, makes speeding illegal, well, then people go faster. It's just whatever they want to do. Drugs are illegal. Well, there's now a black market for it. Make guns illegal. There's going to be a black market for it. If you want a gun, you're going to get a gun, and there will be somebody out there to supply it for you. And
even in the cities that have illegal handguns, they just make zip guns, and now they just take they just flip a coin and decide whether or not it's going to blow up their hand or if it's going to shoot the person.
You're right. I mean, you can't argue.
And then when you have with 3D printing, I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen the videos of how they do it. They're able to 3D print guns out of high-impact plastic.
Yep.
I think just like anything, as you mentioned, Jimmy, I think just like anything, anything you put a prohibition on, whether it be marijuana or alcohol or guns or anything else, is only going to make there be more crime, more violence, and more of the rest of it. So it's hard for us to think that, it wouldn't go the same way, and maybe intentionally, just to enforce the crackdown and to have more of a controlled police state, whatever it may be. I think that, again, this whole idea of telling someone they can't have something always tends to breed more criminality. And just like all the countries that seeing major decreases after decriminalization of drugs, I think it's the same kind of thing in reverse.
Hey, Rick, anything else?
Oh, no, I was just going to add, I have kids, a lot of people have kids, and that when your kid wants something, you say, no, you can't have it. They want it even more. And then later on, when they want to do something that's even more out of line, you can use that original thing they didn't want as a bargaining tool.
There you go.
The whole entire we're going to take your guns away could be just a distraction, and then go, oh no, you can keep your guns, but right. then the other shoe drops.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What's going to be the caveat they're going to add onto that? That's a good point, Rick.
Yeah, that's a great point. Rick, all the best, brother.
Cool. Take it easy, guys. Thanks.
Great call. Yeah, he's absolutely right. Look at Elvis. Elvis is a good example. Elvis is bad, right? Let's help somebody sell 20 million records in a couple of days.
The shaking of the hips and everything was just evil to take over America.
Yeah, as soon as you tell a kid no, they do the exact opposite. I'm a dad, I go through it every single day. It doesn't matter. Hey, okay, no, quick station ID. This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm Jimmy Church. We're talking with Josh Reeves. Josh, you said something right before Rick's call Who is running the world? Who is really pulling the strings?
I was hoping you were going to go there, Jimmy.
Yeah, I got to go there.
Past that one.
I think about it every single day. You know, politicians come and go, but the agenda stays the same.
Right.
You know, who's at fault here?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm not going to, in any way, shape, or form, pretend that I have the 100% definitive answer for it. Because if I told you I did, I would tell you not to trust me. Because I don't think anybody, I really don't. I really don't think any single person knows for sure. And I think everybody is speculating at this point. But what I will tell you that's all I can really give you is based on my own research. And based on my own research, kind of what I was saying earlier, people get into the normal things where they hear what people tell them. And you hear a lot of people say that the Rothschilds are the tip top. And that's just patently not true. I mean, you can actually find that there are levels of control that go well above these groups. Where I started getting my start in this kind of thing was back when I first started my radio show 7 years ago. Like the second or third show I ever did, I had on former Canadian diplomat Peter Dale Scott, who's written a lot of books on the Contras and 9/11 and the rest of stuff. And it's just a great old guy. Mm-hmm. And I had him on my show, and we were talking about, he's my first guest ever, and we were just talking about, the usual groups, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, this kind of thing. And he said, no, you got it wrong. Those groups are not nearly as powerful as people say they are. You need to look into this group called the Council for National Policy. And I'd never heard of that. And he said, this is, they were kind of started in Dallas, and these guys are really who's running things, and they control stuff on both sides, left or right. And I just was shocked because I had been researching for, 15, 16, 17 years at that point. I had never even heard hide nor hair of this group. And then when I first start looking into it, immediately I start seeing names that happen to be names of people who are regular guests on a certain conspiratorial show, what would be considered probably the biggest one. And I started, well, wait a minute here. What's this? And I started finding that all of it was, these right wingers, when predominantly the research community had always said that, the people who really ran the world and the people who really were in charge of the top were of the left wing persuasion. And I started seeing all these names that had ties back to, the biggest groups. And here we are. I'm going, wait a minute. So it's more than just this control. So I started looking into the priest class, the religious elements that control world groups, think tanks, stuff like the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the Fabian Socialist Society, all this stuff. And I made 2 films on this group, the Council for National Policy, Secret Right Volume 1 and Secret Right Volume 2. And those are on YouTube. People can watch them for free. And that's where I started getting to, okay, I want to find out who's behind all this. And really the biggest revelation that I can really impart to people is that when you go back through the centuries and you go back through the levels of control, you find one thing for sure. In the earliest incarnations of government, the priests were the government. You didn't have presidents and kings and queens and congressmen and senators. They had priests. The priests were in charge. The priests were the ones that delineated the information or the knowledge that supposedly came from the gods and then ruled over society with that. This is how the first civilizations in ancient Mesopotamia and Iraq were set up. And when you learn that and you start to work backwards from that, then you start to see these tentacles of religious control go through all of the different groups and think tanks that exist in this modern day. And then when you find out things like the secret society network, stuff like where what spawned groups like the Freemasons and the Los Alumbrados Society, which later spawned what people know as the quote-unquote Illuminati and things like that. When you start to find out that these original groups, which originated even prior to Freemasonry, back to the Pythagorean mystery schools, and then also back to the first secret society known as the Brotherhood of the Snake or the Brotherhood of the Serpent, which I discuss in The Lost Secrets of Ancient America, you see that these groups originally were intended to take knowledge that was imparted to humans from whatever these gods are, whether these gods are aliens or whatever they are, whatever information was imparted to humans from these quote unquote gods was then supposed to be only given to certain people because they didn't want the masses to have all of this knowledge and we just have total chaos. So originally, the first secret society was set up with secrecy in order to keep the stuff from falling into the wrong hands. And that ideology of secrecy stayed in place throughout the years, whether it went on to be the Pythagorean groups or later the Freemasons and then the Knights Templar, whatever it may be. All of these groups, the original secrecy and the reason for the secrecy morphed from it being strictly about protecting the information to then becoming secrecy that would become a form of control. And this has existed from the very beginning into the modern day. And those things, when you think about those things I just talked about, Jimmy, and you go down those routes and you look at it, you can then come to a very strong conclusion about who really runs the world.
The Vatican?
No, I'm not. I don't think you can boil it down to one group, one name, or another.
Okay.
I think you can only boil it down to groups worldwide that have all been working together that go back to the very beginning foundations of civilizations on the planet.
Okay. And when I look at let's just for general purposes here, we have Putin and we have Obama. As an example, there is somebody that they answer to, and it has been whoever they're answering to was there before they came into power, right? Yes. And that same group, person or persons, is going to be there after they leave. Right. And what is it? There is something there that they know that these two heads of state don't. And so what is the agenda and what is it that they know? What is it? Just like you just said, the information came from the heavens, came from somewhere, whether it was ET or a god, but this information has always been kept private. And that has been the struggle. So what is it that puppet string manipulator, what is it that they know, and why is it so important that we don't know?
It's another good question, and it's again one that I don't pretend to have all the answers for, Jimmy. I'm just going to give you my best speculation from the research I've done, and it does indicate to me that whatever it may be, the importance, and it doesn't matter what leader and what country, what time period that you're talking about, you look at all world events, it does seem that no matter what happens, there seems to be a large importance on keeping the status quo, keeping their formation or the way that they envision society to be, perpetuating itself into the future indefinitely. Now, for whatever reason, I can't really tell you. We could speculate on it all day, but it seems that if you really wanted to boil it down to a base idea, the base idea is to keep their system in place and going uninterrupted indefinitely. And I think that whether that has to do with some future revelation or future event, whether that has to do with that being what some, controlling group or being from somewhere wants as their will for us. Again, all these things are speculation. But the fact of the matter is, as you mentioned, it doesn't matter what leader it is or what time period it is. It's very clear when you do the research that these guys are taking orders from a higher level, and at some point you hit a brick wall. You go up and up and up, and you get to names, and you get to the point where you start to understand that the people that really run the planet, their names are not on the internet. Their names are not there. I have encountered things like this. I've had people tell me stories of, my dad, worked with this guy and he was, involved in, some high level stuff. And then you go look up this guy's name and you can't find hide nor hair of it on the name, but you can find David Rockefeller and, Lord Rothschild all day. I think that's one thing people need to consider is that I don't think the people who really run this planet are going to be hot linked. Let's just put it like that.
Hi, Dino. Say hi to Josh.
Hi, Josh. Hello. Good evening, Jimmy. You're in an area in the latter part of this discussion, which I have a little bit of knowledge of. I was trained in the latter part of my life by the Jesuits. And while they are very academic, and we're just speculating here because I don't know, but they're very academic, but they've also been kind of like there's many adjectives you could use, but they're part of the Catholic Church that kind of got things done, dealt with finances, and the whole thought, I know as I was growing up, and I think after World War II, at least in the Western world, was if you give everybody a liberal arts education, then, they're all going to think the same, see, because the liberal arts education, this is how we deal with things.
Right.
But as I get older and I learn things, if there is, which I believe, an extraterrestrial presence, there are many different races and factions of extraterrestrials. It's not just gray guys. And they have different agendas, but being from the outside of our society, you know how you can always tell when someone is screwing up because you're watching them from the outside, but they are sometimes themselves not as aware of it because we're all kind of self-centered and worrying about our own fears, wants, and needs. So if what you're saying is, this speculation, this would be a perfect way for an extraterrestrial civilization or the others who might have been here since ancient times to take over, because they'd say, hey, we'll play these guys and we'll use the guys that are undercover to do our dirty work for us. What do you say?
I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, my film series that I mentioned earlier, not the Lost Secrets, but the Secret Rite, Volume 1 and Volume 2, both of those, we talk about the Jesuits extensively in both of those. As you mentioned, they're the intellectual and planning end of world events. We have one of the films, we have an actual ex-Jesuit whistleblower who talks about how the Jesuits planned, but they didn't carry out the military branch, which would be the Knights of Malta, the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, who have members in all branches of government worldwide. They're the acting end of it. They take the orders from the Jesuits, which is the intellectual end of it. And this whistleblower talks about how the Jesuits came up with the plan to assassinate JFK and carry that out. And they do seem to be one of the highest levels of power and one of the ones that people know the least about. So the connection between them, the religious element, and possibly, these extraterrestrials and whatnot, in this sort of being the stopgap between those two, you're right. I mean, it's very, very, we don't know that for a fact, but you're right on the right path, I believe, in making that connection between these long-established religious organizations and these visitors that make up, as you mentioned, different races, different types, and all that. I think you're on the right track.
What about David Icke? Is he actually, hold on. I said that the wrong way. I asked it the wrong way. There are a lot of, we were talking about Bill Cooper earlier. Well, not on this show, but earlier. There's a lot of radical ideas out there. David Icke is one. David Wilcock is another. That have this multiple race reptilian frame of. Are they going to turn out to be correct? Do you feel in your research? Do you feel like they're onto something?
Well, personally, no. Gosh, you want me to just be brutally honest here?
Well, well, of course I do, but and I only say that, Bill Cooper is not David Icke, but what I'm trying to say is sometimes these thoughts, that are coming from way outside of the box have a way of coming true. And as radical as Icke may be, or Wilcock, and reptilians and running monarchs and hybrids, sometimes these things tend to come true. And
I agree, but I think sometimes, Jimmy, that it's more of the fact that, again, the same thing. They're putting out some things that are true, And of course, some of that is going to appear to be, oh, okay, maybe they were right. But it's those other things. Like Wilcock was, he was number one in telling everybody that the world was going to end in 2012. I mean, that guy was number one. How he still has a career, I'll never know. He was the guy. I haven't forgot this. I remember stuff. And he was on every show fear-mongering the world was going to end. And nobody calls him on it or holds him to it.
Right.
Ike, I've had my own experiences with. I interviewed him probably after I'd been on air only 3 or 4 months at that point. I interviewed David Icke very early on. That audio is still out there on YouTube. And one of the things that happened to me while I was conducting this interview with him is I felt this, and I've never experienced this with anybody else I've ever interviewed. I felt like I was having what's the way I can put this? I just felt like my etherical energy, my energy, my soul energy, my body was being artificially drained by some external source the entire time I was doing this interview with him. When I was done, I'm somebody who's very, very sensitive to energies and vibes and that kind of thing. And if I walk into a room and I don't like the vibe of it, I'll leave. I'm just how I am. I'm really sensitive to it. But when I interviewed David Icke, I was flat on my butt after I got done interviewing. I felt like I ran a marathon. I was completely tired. And this was in early 2008. About a year later, I drove from Texas to New Mexico with some friends to go see David Icke perform his, 13-hour extravaganza. And it was literally 13 hours. It was an all-day thing. And so we went and we went to the talk. And within the first 10 minutes of this talk, that feeling that I had when I did the interview started coming back to me.
Wow.
I started feeling like I was being drained. I couldn't explain it. And they had these barricades up along the stage where he was talking where you couldn't see what was behind them. And I was just like, why do they need that? It's a big empty room. Why not just have that be open space? Why have that all cordoned off with these tall high-rise rafters where, there could be anything behind there. And I had to go out with a friend and get some air, and we both just felt the same thing yet again. And, I don't know, Jimmy, this stuff is stranger than fiction. I mean, there's been people that have put out there, well, hey, what if some of these guys like Ike and others talk about reptiles? What if they are the reptiles? I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I can only go by what I've experienced. And those two things I experienced with him were very strange. I've never experienced that with anybody else in my life. And but at the same time, it's the stuff that he talks about, like, the reptilians. He tells this story about seeing I think it was the former prime minister of Britain, the guy who was the prime minister of Britain in the 70s. David Icke relates this story about being backstage at a TV show at the same time he was, and this guy running into him and him scanning David Icke, looking at him and his eyes rolling over black and scanning him up and down. That exact scenario, before I even ever heard that story from David Icke, happened to me back in 2006 when I had confronted former Speaker of the House, Tom DeLay.
Shut up. Whoa.
Yeah,
whoa.
This is unbelievable.
Pump the brakes. Pump the brakes there, Josh. You got to stop and explain.
This was insane. I mean, this was one of those, again, I can only tell you and base what I believe on this, on what has happened to me and what I've experienced.
Well, he is a rep. You can look at him and see reptilian anyway. So there you go.
I'll get to that. At that point, I didn't know anything about it. I was, back then, this was back in the 9/11 truth days, the heyday of that 2005, 2006.
Right.
Somewhere there was the heyday of that. He was doing a book signing here in Dallas. And so some of us in our 9/11 group were like, hey, let's go down and ask him about 9/11. And nobody else ended up showing up but me and my sister. And we had on these 9/11 shirts. My shirt said, what happened to World Trade Center building number 7? Mine had the question. Her shirt had the answer. It said controlled demolition. So we're the only two. We're waiting on Tom DeLay to get there. We're in the parking lot. I'm kind of standing out by the car, and I see this car pull up, and I kind of see him walking out. And he's walking over, and he walks up and sees us immediately standing there and says, hey, how y'all doing? And we said, oh, hey, how's it going? And right at that moment, he looks at my shirt, looks at her shirt, face turns blood red. Then he looks at me. I see his eyes turn black. He looks me up and down, looks at her up and down, looks back at me and says, y'all have a good day, and walks right into the Barnes & Noble, and I was mortified. We left. We didn't even go in and try to confront him or do anything after that. And at the time, I just thought, whoa, that's just weird. That's just some weird thing. I didn't know anything about it. And then I heard that Icke story of him describing that same thing happen. And even at that time, I was kind of wish-washy on Icke. But when I heard that story, well, wait a minute here. I had almost that exact same thing happen to me. And then on top of that, I later on, was just looking. I was like, well, let me see, if there's ever anybody who's ever said anything about Tom DeLay being a reptile or something. So I went and looked it up and did a search on it. And I'll be damned, the first thing I saw was was a page that said, High Reptilian Overlord Commander Tom DeLay. And I just went, there's got to be something to this.
Wow, that is crazy.
Again, I'm not trying to tell that story to tell people I believe in reptilians and I believe they're real and they're a threat. I'm not telling you that story for it to have that effect on you. I'm just, again, trying to tell you things that I've experienced that coincide with things researchers have said that, again, I don't even really like David Icke. I don't even agree with him. But I cannot ignore or deny the fact that I had an experience exactly as he described one.
I'm looking at the pictures that are being tweeted right now of Tom DeLay, and I'm reading reptilian for sure, and I'm looking at this picture. Yeah, he's always kind of freaked me out. This is the thing about David Icke. First off, I genuinely like the guy. I really, really do. I think he's compassionate. I think he's very, very smart. He's got a degree in crowd control that we know nothing about. He's gone to some special school, and his ability to do, like you just said, his 13 hours, 8-hour marathon seminars that he does. And I really enjoy listening to him. When you hear him speak with such conviction, now I didn't experience what you're talking about when he was on the show with us, but I found him to be the exact opposite of what his reputation is. He's a hard-nosed, loud-mouthed, in your face guy. And I don't think he's any of that. I think he's
very soft-spoken.
Yeah, and I think he does. He goes into that zone to get his message across at times. I think he comes across a little brash, but I think the guy is cool. I really do. And same thing for Wilcock, David Wilcock. I think I find him to be very warm, very cool. Rita will tell you when we saw him out of contact in the desert, he's got his security team around him and armed. I mean, real deal dudes, right? And so he was just on the show, and he speaks, and we dash outside of the hall, and he jumps into a golf cart, and I walk up. I'm the only person outside, and I said, David, Jimmy Church, and he's told his security guys to stop the cart, jumps off the cart, and comes up and how you doing? I really believe these are warm, compassionate guys that really believe what they're saying, and I listen. I really do. I think they have a closed mind when it comes to guys that think they know what they're saying. They know what they're saying in public to people. And I listen. I do not want to have a closed mind. I don't. Just like I said with Bill Cooper. If you go and you close your mind off and you're not listening, and then the next thing you know, you're wrong. Well, you know what? It's okay to be right, but what if you're wrong? And that's my point. I have open ears with all of that. And look what you and DeLay. That's a really, really good point. You hear that from Mike, and then you have your own experience yourself, and it makes you just want to stop and scratch your head and go, maybe there is something to this.
Yeah, and that's something I always want to make sure I get across to people too, is that, I don't have to like someone or be, into their work. Same thing with me, to give them credit for what they're right about, or as much as I would give them blame for something they'd be wrong about. And with that instance, for me, to have an experience like that mirrored that Icke story identically was just something I was not expecting to have. And it is something that goes a long way to convince you. But I think the most important thing, Jimmy, for people to understand out there is whether it be Josh Reeves or David Icke or Jimmy Church or whoever it may be, no one single person is ever going to have all the answers and all the right answers. Take the best stuff from everybody that you can and form your own conclusion. That's the most important thing.
And that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Say hi to Josh Reeves. Who's calling? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Steve from Bluefield.
Steve, how are you tonight, sir?
Doing all right, Jimmy. How are you? How are you, Josh?
Hey, doing all right. Thanks for being on, man.
Okay, here we go, fellas.
Okay, Steve.
Okay, we're always talking about who's right and who's wrong. You know, which researcher knows this, knows that. At the end of the day, Jimmy, we have to come together. We can argue the fact whether someone's right or wrong when it's all said and done, when it's all over. We have to get everyone's mind open to the fact that that we've been lied to from the giddy up, flat out. We've been lied from the giddy up. And we've got to open everyone's mind and come together. All the researchers need to come together. Who cares whether you're right or you're wrong? Who cares?
That's exactly, I think, well, isn't that what we're saying here tonight?
Well, I think so. But we got to, I hope that everyone understands that's what has to happen.
Yeah,
I definitely agree.
It's not about, who's right or wrong here.
No, this Josh is the guest, and I'm speaking, and that's rude. But I'll say this, Steve, and you and I know each other well enough now. You know where I'm coming from. All of us are. I'll say it. It's the mantra of this show. We're rolling this rock uphill. What we do know, as a collective, whether it's about ufology, whether it's about 9/11, whether it's about gas prices, and whether it's about defective cars or underwear or Ebola, it doesn't matter. You need to figure out what the real truth is. You've got to constantly be aware. And I think as a collective, as a society today, we're doing just that. And that's your concern. That's Josh's concern. That is this audience's concern. We're not stupid anymore. We're not. And you're absolutely right. Well, who's right and wrong doesn't matter. It's the truth and us sticking together today, arm in arm.
Right. I agree. Because it doesn't matter whether Kitchen is right, whether Josh is right, whether Von Daniken is right, it don't matter.
But with
we
that
have
said,
to pull everybody together.
But with that,
everybody has to come together.
See, I agree with that 100%. But with that said, I think it's also important. I want to make sure this is crystal clear. I also think it's also important to make sure that we aren't in the spirit of us all coming together. I also think it's also our responsibility to make sure that we're not just taking what somebody says because we like that person. And we have a moniker of trust that we built up in our head about them. I think it's important that, we take these things and make sure it's not about who's right and who's wrong, but we need to make sure that we don't have people who are putting out wrong things intentionally to, spoil it for everybody else and to mess up just foul the pot and everything. And I think we do see a lot of that. I think there is a lot of people out there who intentionally put out misinformation and wrong information and do serve the powers that be. And I think it's important that those be singled out when we can. And that's one thing I've done in a lot of my work and a lot of my films. But I also, at the same time, have been someone who has said for the longest time that this division between us on any of this stuff just is exactly what they want anyway.
That's exactly right. Does nobody any good.
You're dead. You hit the nail square on the head, Josh.
Absolutely.
We got to talk about the powers to be. It's hard for me to explain to everybody that's listening kind of where I come from. I own two businesses. I have a very large cattle farm. So I understand the economics that goes on in this country. For us to believe that we even know who those people are, you've got to be out of your mind. People want to look at Forbes and you see Bill Gates or, Warren Buffett. These people have no idea what you're dealing with the powers to be. These people have vast resources that surpass all the richest people in the world combined.
And,
You're absolutely right.
And
and they just take control.
well, yeah.
They also control those people. I think those people are basically a front to disguise the fact that they are there.
That's what I was saying earlier. The people who really run the world, their names are not on the internet. They're not in Forbes.
That's right. They're not in Forbes. It's incomprehensible first of all, for people to understand for Bill Gates, he's worth, I don't know, $54 billion or something like that. It is so hard to comprehend that kind of money. It's overwhelming. And then to realize that there are people out there that control and have so much more than that, it's really hard to wrap your head around and understand what we're dealing with globally and what the global impact that these people have and the power that they have.
You're exactly right, Steve. I mean, to think about it, if you just stop and think about the richest person that you know is absolute. The richest person that you know is less than pocket change to these people. Just think about whoever it is that you're thinking about. I don't care who it is absolute pocket change or below. A piece of a penny. And we're up against it, Steve. You have a good night, man. Tomorrow night's Fader night, brother.
Hey, thanks for the time, Jimmy.
Always. Thank you. Yeah, isn't that no matter what you think about the power of, like I said, Putin or whoever's the current president of the United States or whoever's running China, whoever you're thinking about, there is somebody with much more power and that can actually dictate.
That's just one of the constants, Jimmy, in all my years of research. The constant thing that I find, no matter how deep I dig and how far I go in looking at this, is that there is always some level of control beyond what you can see on the surface. And it's hard to, quantize that. It's hard to put that in a way where people can see it and understand it. And it's one of the reasons why people like myself and, people in the past, Bill Cooper, whoever it may be, it's one of the reasons why we are always, is really the single-handed reason why we always tell people to do their own research. Because there are certain things that you intuit from this stuff when you research it that is hard for anyone to put in language to describe. It's something you can only experience and know for yourself by looking into it. So when you start to look into the history of control, the history of there being any other human, over the top of and ruling over another human for any reason, when you go as far back as you can with that, you start to see these correlations and you see these things in the modern day where there is this importance. The good example is like the bloodline thing, or the royals, and how that traces back to these ancient clans and whatnot that go back to certain lands. It's all of it has to do with keeping these certain elements in power, and as I mentioned earlier, keeping everything perpetuating itself into the future indefinitely. And anything that gets in the way that may stop this system from perpetuating itself indefinitely gets squashed, whether it be a movement or a Kennedy or whatever it may be. Anything that gets in their way gets squashed, and it's got to go beyond just, regular human people. Think about it. These guys bleed, as far as you and I know, Jimmy, the people that run the world, they bleed the same way we do. But here we are thousands of years later, and we're still being ruled over by these same people. Why? It can't just be because we're all too weak to ever do anything about it. There is something that goes well beyond what the material world will show you as far as who is really in control.
I got to thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you, Jimmy. I had a blast.
No, I'm serious. I thank you. I can't wait to get you back on. And you've got to come out to California. We got to knock back a couple of beers and throw some ribs, on the grill and kick back. I can only imagine what that conversation would be like. Josh Reeves, everybody. The Global Reality is his website, as everybody knows. You can get to it through jimmychurchradio.com. Just click on Josh Reeves.
Hey, Jimmy, do I have time to throw out a special deal for your listeners?
You can do it right now. You've got 30 seconds.
Here it is. People can go get all my films. You can get downloads and DVDs and Blu-rays and all that. But I'm going to do a special deal just because I like Jimmy so much. The first 50 people that go buy one of my DVDs, Lost Secrets Volume 1 or 2, will get a free download instantaneous. So you'll be able to watch it while you're waiting for your movie to get there. First 50 people, Jimmy's audience only. I'm only doing this for you. And again, I just really appreciate the opportunity to come on, Jimmy. And I definitely want to do it again.
All the best. We should do this like once a week.
Absolutely. It's great, man. We can just talk about whatever.
Yeah, man. We
have a round table,
We need to do it, man. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Absolutely amazing. Josh Reeves, everybody. Have a good night, Josh. Wow. Whoa. I'm going to roll straight from that to credits. Thank you, Josh Reeves. Do go to theglobalreality.com. Go check out Josh's website. There's a really cool special offer for you right there. So go and check out Volume 1 and Volume 2. Josh is the man, and I'll say it right now. He is the man. Thank you, Josh Reeves. Theglobalreality.com. Got to get him back soon. Stay tuned. Coming up next is After Hours AM. Special thanks to Keith Rowland and Art Bell. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Mark D. Kovar, and, got to give credit to Leslie S. Johnson III. Fady by Dale Romero. Graphics by Method of Signaling. Check out faders.org. Go hang out. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, Mark D. Kovar. Music is by Doug Aldrich. Intro by Spaceboy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Dark Matter Radio Network. I am your humble host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, Fader Night. Be safe. See ya.